This meeting is being broadcast and recorded, and come to order at 6:30.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The agenda's in your packets for tonight's meeting. The first order of business is the acceptance of minutes for the March 9th regular board meeting. And I'd ask that you review them, note any corrections, and vote to approve.
At the top, I noted the present, and I know that there were a lot of other people there.
We did not have a sign-in sheet.
Is that just, wasn't an oversight for that meeting? Okay, because it's just, maybe we should say something like personnel were in attendance for each of the abatements. We had nobody else other than that. It's just,
Right.
I worried that sometime later someone says, how come you didn't put that there?
And in fact, if you like, we can go back to the tape.
Well, they're all mentioned.
They're all mentioned, which ones were.
Right, so if we
here.
just said,
Mr.
people
Ms.
were in attendance relative to, because relative to each of the abatements, it was just.
Oh, except for one, and it's.
It's so infrequent that we have anybody attending that.
Page 6, second to last line in that paragraph, I guess typically we reference people you were, so I will.
Oh, yeah, I missed that. Yeah. Thought I grabbed all those references, but I missed one.
I knew what it meant, I just.
And will supply. Yeah. At the next meeting. You can take that last sentence out.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, other than that, anything else, gentlemen? I make a motion to approve the minutes of the March 9th, 2017 meeting as amended.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. There are no abatement requests before the board tonight. And as we discussed at the last meeting, we would dedicate the first part, and I've intentionally kept the agenda fairly light tonight, to discuss with Joe Jordan the proposed draft adjustments to rates and tiers as we've been talking about, moving towards the next rate hearing, adjusting our tables, our values, trying to simplify, trying to streamline, and try to sync up water and sewer so they're more understandable. So he's here tonight. He's got his live link to the database, so feel free. I'm sure he's got a presentation, but if there's any questions, we can live, make calculations, adjustments, and so forth. You can kind of see the impacts based on that. So take it away.
Okay, so,
Which?
I think it's that one right there, isn't it?
Yeah, just the bottom switch. You can just. There you go.
So if everyone recalls, several months ago, we talked about trying to simplify the rate structure in the tiers in the water and sewer department. The sewer rates, as you know, there's about 50 plus different rate categories, if you will, between, it is residential quarterly, residential semi-annual, two-family, three-family, and up, on, and in each category, there's 5 separate tiers. In discussions we had several months ago, there was talk about, can we do something to simplify and maybe reduce the number of rate tiers? At that time, suggestion was made by the board that perhaps on an annual basis, we do a 0 to 40 CCF, or 4,000 cubic feet, and then the next would go to 41 to 100 CCF, and then the third tier would be greater than 100. What I try to do is set up both water and sewer using these same categories, and just for demonstration purposes, I tried to put in some theoretical rates. You'll see that for the first tier, which would be a 0 use up to, or I guess 1 CCF or 1 cubic foot up to 4,000. And I apologize, keep mixing my terms here. That would be tier 1, and in here I just put down, you'll see the cost of 2.75 cents per cubic foot. The next tier would go from 4,100 CF to 10,000 CF.
That's an annual tier, so the
Right,
actual
right. These
tier,
are all annual.
so the actual tier would then be 10 to 25, if it's a quarterly tier.
Okay, and I did try to make adjustments as we went through it. And if my
Because we can't know what someone's using in like the third quarter to know which, unless you're gonna build them first quarter only 0 to 40, and when they hit 40, in a year, they go to the next one. I don't think that's what you
Okay, so
intended,
is it
right?
just real quick, these are quarterly billing. So what I did is, on this particular customer, they were billed in this particular quarter 12,000 CF. And so to get the 0 to 40 on an annual basis, or 4,000 cubic feet, each quarter, we
10.
start at, 10 CCF. I'd really like to just deal in CCF. So, and then from when you take where are we? This 12,001. So you take 1,000 off, that leaves 11,000, and then the next one goes from the 2,100
to
right
25, which is the 1,500.
right. Let's just see what we did here. So that goes T8 2,000. All right, so what I said is, if 11,000 is greater than this, right, you subtract it, and because this is a 3,000 cubic foot block, if you will, because it's quarterly, we would only bill them, obviously, half that, so 1,500 per billing cycle.
Well,
That's semi-annual.
Yeah, that's,
No, this is quarterly. This is one customer. These are
right, but 0 to 40 on an annual is 0 to 20 on a semi-annual.
right. And these are, so just real quick. You go up to semi-annual, it's all adjusted. So I'm using 2,000 as your first tier. And then this is, instead of 1,500, it goes to 3,000. So it's adjusted based on what your billing cycle.
Right. You just did this to look at revenue under the current scenario versus revenue under
Right,
the
right. If
future
we
scenario.
took
But
this-
everyone is proposed to be quarterly. We're not gonna have 2 different rate structures coming out of this, or would we?
We would until we go to quarterly.
Everybody quarterly.
Right.
Okay.
So initially, and the only reason I did it this way is I took all the bills that we issued in 2016. I just wanted to do a comparison. So these people, for example, obviously they're semi-annual, and what I wanted to do is show what they were actually charged based off of actual billings and what they would be charged under the new scenario. So just this first one here, under the old, currently, they were billed $159.77 for, where are we, this is water use, for 4,900 CF in the first billing, and the second semi-annual, they were billed $170. If you come over here, these would be the charges under the new.
Well, under your sandbox, I just want to
Right.
iterate to folks, these aren't the rates. that-
Under
this is-
a proposed scenario, one possible scenario. So, for this customer in particular, and we don't know who it is, just random, their annual cost would actually go down a little bit. It would be $17.77 less on their first semi-annual billing, be $25.36 less on the second annual billing. And so what I just tried to do is in this column here, and again, there's thousands of lines here, but I think, let's go back down to the bottom. So, just under one scenario using, the prices I threw in, the tier different structure. Under this scenario, we actually billed $1,062,091 in calendar 2016. I was just trying to get a 12-month period for demonstration. If under this scenario, this one possible scenario, we would have billed out $1,138,637, or it'd be a net increase of 76. Now, if I change any of these numbers here, all this changed. So let's say we're saying for this core group, this is $3 per 100 CCF. If I said, let's make this $2.95 per CCF, that would go to, it would draw, we'd make it a little bit less, and it'd only be 71. So we can play with all these numbers to get in something the board would be comfortable with. What I also tried to do down here is what was the average change, and that was just of the 7,300 lines. What's the average? And on average, people's bills would go up $10. The max change is 4,800, and that basically would be some of the larger users, probably one of the trailer parks. And one discussion we had, and this is all something for the board to digest, is that right now is if you have 1 meter, you can say, I have a 4-family house. Whether or not it's occupied or not, if you have a 4-family house, before you go to the next tier, you use 4 times the usage in a given tier before you go to the next tier. And one thing that was proposed was if you have 1 meter, then you're going to go to the next tier when you hit the appropriate number of CCF. We're not going to say, well, you have a 4-family, so we're going to take 4 times, and the industrial parks have 60 homes in one of them. So it's, before they go to tier 2, they're going to take tier 1 consumption times 60, and then they go to the next one. And it's going to be people like that are going to end up paying, and this is probably a quarterly bill, so they're going to be about $16,000 more per year. Keep it in mind, they also split that over 60 people.
Again, this is a scenario.
Yeah, and this is just one scenario.
Is so this is not set up to have a base charge? This is set up, it's only on usage?
Yes, and the reason is, I noticed when I started doing this, base charge is not included here either.
Because there is no base charge in water.
Yes, there is.
There is.
It's $23
So
and change.
so we would have to add that in.
Right. So whatever the base charge is, it's going to be the same. or if it goes
No,
up
it's
on
not
the.
if
well,
people are going to quarterly, I guess.
Okay, if it's quarterly, if remember, we have a quarterly base and we have a semi-annual base. So if we're gonna keep that the same, regardless if we change the tiers, if we're gonna keep the base charge the same,
Right, but if we eliminate the base, then we need to add it
Right.
into those charges to get a true
okay. well,
pre-change revenue stream to make sure we're covering the
okay,
base charge.
Right now.
So that
this
charges number
does not.
doesn't-
This does not include a base charge. It's just the way the accounting system shows it. Base charges are independent. And because this doesn't include a base, I
Right.
didn't include a
What I'm
base
saying
over
though is,
here.
if the board decides to move to a tier system that eliminates base charges,
Right, and I'm not
we-
proposing that at this point.
we would
Yes.
need to rerun that and then account for the base charges to make sure we're not
Right.
shortfalling
Is
the
there,
revenue.
I like the ability to play around with it. I guess I'm not of the opinion that the base charge is right. You know what I'm saying? So for us to understand if we change the base charge to this or this, then how do we
Right.
balance out the rest of the rates? Because
So
can't assume that it's gonna be the same before and after.
I guess my assumption is if we kept a base charge, so just for sake of argument, right now, let's look at quarterly bills here. Quarterly bill is 23 and change, I think. Let's just, for sake of argument, say the base charge now is $20, just for illustration purposes. That is not included in here, so I could easily say, okay, in base charges, we get X number of
Right.
dollars.
Right.
If we kept the base, it would be a logical assumption to say that if we kept it, we have it now, and if we kept it going forward, whatever the base charge here is, would also get added to
Right, but
this.
he's saying, what if the board decides to alter the base charge?
Then what you would do is you'd say, okay, we made $1,062,000 plus the base of X.
Right, if
So
you know
you
what that
have
number is,
these
it'd be
two,
good to
right,
have it there.
right.
Because I can see an easy way to modify it, that we can now look at a base charge as well, even looking at semi-annual versus quarterly billing, and if we were to change, just because I'm worried we're making such a drastic change, and we have a lot of things in motion relative to water costs and wastewater costs, and I don't want to be in a place where we're all wringing our hands in 2 years going, I wish we'd had a better handle on this today, as we sit here right now, and now we're having to make all these changes, and we just look like we didn't go through it thoroughly enough, and so, and we're having to make major adjustments to the tiers in order to end up in a place where everything's still solvent.
Solvent.
Okay.
So, and that's why,
Solvent.
I tried to use actual charges.
Yep.
And so, this is for calendar 15, I wasn't so much worried about fiscals, I just
Right.
wanted.
No,
And so.
this is great,
so-
to have this data, knowing how much people were billed, and then we could start playing with the tiers.
Right.
I think 3 tiers is the right way to go, but I'm also, I'm of a strong opinion that a base charge is important because, we just changed out every meter out there. And it was lucky that we had the money, you
Yep.
did an admirable job getting our collections up to date in order to spend that money, but we can't count on that. We're not gonna go into those arrears again. It's just not happening. So we need to collect money for those, the effort it takes to put those meters out. We're spending, what, $250 a house or something like that for the meters?
Yeah, something with
So
installation.
we need to, have that money coming in so that we can be able to do that when it's time again. And we have to pay for that labor, people to go out and read the meters, and people to go into people's houses and say, the little wheel's not spinning, or all those things that happen with a meter. That's crucial to the base charge, and that has to be allocated to water and to sewer. So we got to, that's one of the core elements. Plus, there are other pieces that we got to be thinking about relative to the base charges, so that we're, at least when somebody has a meter in their house and they're not using anything, we're covering our costs to have that meter there. We can't just, have it be a zero bill. And I'm not sure that the current, collections, maybe it needs to be lower. Maybe we say, no, the base charge is too high. We do the math and it should be $10 or a quarter, whatever it is. But, I think we have to be cognizant of that in this analysis. I understand it's easy to say, well, it was this, we don't change it, it'll be the same going after. But if we're switching everyone from, semi-annual to quarterly, that's gonna change that base minimum charge all by itself. And even that in itself is gonna change the financials, because unless there is the minimum double, I wish I knew the rates
Yes,
better.
yes,
Okay.
so on the, I'll stay with water, because water is a little easier. When you go from quarterly to semi-annual, the base charges go up, but also all the usages, so.
Right,
if the
right, but it's the
quarter-
base charge double.
Yes,
Okay,
for the semi-annual,
all right.
it is.
So it wouldn't impact things that directly.
I
No,
would recommend that we make your math equation a little simpler by just working off a quarterly billing, because we're gonna be there fairly quickly. As soon as we're able to switch to quarterly billing, that's,
right,
Right,
so, on these spreadsheets is probably, I don't know, I can go up and find it real quick. Let me just put that, get us back here quick. So, say 7,400,
No, they're mixed.
no, it's just when you go,
Because those are semi there.
okay, so these are semi, and this is where we pop into quarterly. So, what did we say, 76? So 45, there's about
60%
right, 1,500?
on 76.
3,100.
Right, but these
Divided
are
by
four.
Right. So it's, yeah, 700 or 800.
So, I'm showing this, and to try to go back and recalculate all these on a quarterly basis would take forever. So it was just, the purpose was just to kind of illustrate, here's what we get now, and with a different rate tier structure, going from 5 to 3, just to kind of give one possible scenario.
Yes, I understand.
As what we get. Now, if we want to do base charges, we could say,
And can those be added in like another column? Is the information available for each of these
Yeah.
accounts that we could?
yeah, and I could easily do that, but it makes sense that if we put a base charge in here for the current ones, that we will put the same base on this for this
Sure,
right now, just to see.
exactly.
And that's why, what I did here, this was exclusive of bases, because I thought the base would be the same. But we can, like Paul said, is, if we're $20, for example, base now, we want to do it at 10, you could put whatever the base is here, what your total cost is, and you can play with this number. And by
Yeah,
changing.
We can add a column to it. It's not, I can
Right.
try to do that.
I can easily do this, and by changing this, or this number, it changes this. If we change these, which is the
Right, the ranges.
the ranges of the tiers. So really, to change these total numbers down here, you're just changing one of 6 numbers up here. And you can do them one at a time, and it changes everything, just to see the impact. So, for example, if the board said, we really think that, we want to take that middle tier instead of going from, on an annual basis, 41 to 100, we want to go 41 to 120. All we have to do is change these 2 numbers, and it changes everything. And that's easy enough to do. But this was more just to say that under this one particular out of infinite number of scenarios, we would make a little bit more money using these rates and these tiers, and it was just, I know the board said, can we see some figures as to if we went to 3 tiers, what would it look like?
Right. But again, even in this case, you have tier 1 and 2 are very similar, and tier 3 is, quite a penalty. We may want,
Right,
we want
and-
something more evenly
And again,
distributed, but that's what the tool gives us the
Right,
ability.
and I think why I use those is I was with the guidance of the board, who said, just let's see what it looks like if we do these. And I think the 100 CCF is what a typical family of 4 may use, but up here I just tried to do 4 people in the house using 65 gallons per day per person. Works out to 126 CCF,
Right.
which is a little bit higher, so maybe we'd want to bump that to, 120 or 130.
Well, but we were looking to have the low rate, the 0 to 40 range.
Limit.
Something very modest, because
Right.
if they have a base charge on there already,
Yeah.
they're gonna pay a fairly large bill for a very minimal amount of water. We weren't looking to necessarily we didn't want to penalize them, but right now, they're very similar, so somebody using, 5 cubic feet, and somebody using 50 cubic feet, the 5 cubic feet's paying way more per cubic foot with the base charge added in than that next range up. So again, we have to, it's just a matter of seeing how it plays out. It's easy to do. I can see how to do it.
Right, and so if you use a 0, so I don't think anyone in here has 1 cubic foot for a billing cycle, but if they did, again, they would get charged $2.75, and under the current rate structure, if they were a semi-annual, they would end up paying less than $50. So, theirs would go up by $2.75 for that one that they used. So it's,
No, I just,
yeah,
this is
I thought this was a
really
good
helpful.
start
This is-
and point
yes.
that.
No,
No.
we talked about, if I can get this mailed to me or whatever
Yeah.
it is, then I can do a little bit with it, just, based on some of the stuff that we talked about in our meeting, and, we can have a workshop or something.
Yeah.
After, because it's really good what you've done here. This is exactly the right way to do it, so that we can look at, A, how people's bills are changing, and B, what's the right way to tier this? It may make sense to have that tier 3 start there and be that high. To me, it's a little harsh, I guess, because you're a 4-family home user using 65 gallons per day for 4 people, and you're into tier 3, and there's a lot of people out there that are going to be well into that tier 3, so you're really hitting that group hard in this scenario.
Right.
And they're not abusers.
And they're
Right.
not necessarily abusing
So-
water. So
So
Right now, so just for,
Why don't we bump it up to 125 and see what that does? The break between 2 and 3.
okay,
He's saying it's 126 for.
So you would
Per
make
year.
that 1,500 be,
so if we went to 120 is a little bit
go
easier.
to 1,750.
Yeah.
So this would go to
1,750, and the other
my
one would be,
glasses.
no, maybe it's higher than that. 1,200 we were looking at?
So if we
1,200
did
divided by
100 and-
4 is
126, and that is, okay, this is,
2,500.
divided by 2 is
Yeah, it's 2,500, sorry.
63. This one. This is the,
Should be
Quarterly.
60. Because we're gonna be at 21 to 60 would be the one
yeah,
sell over.
yeah,
So that bracket is, yeah,
so if we did 120 on the quarterly, that would go to
2,000.
40. No, should go up. Shouldn't be that hard.
No, that's the usage in that bracket, right? So it's 80 divided, yeah, it's 2,000. It's 80 divided by 4.
2,000 we said?
Yep.
And then this one would go to, so there, just by changing that. And on this one, that would go to
4,000.
4,000. So there, now you're within
30,000.
So
30,000. The other thing is, we could drop this down instead of,
right, I could see dropping that one down a little bit and raising tier 2 a little bit.
right, so, this, we did start
Make
this
that
at,
0.04. And then make the other one 0.55 or something like that.
so now you're making
Drop it
100,000
considerably.
more.
Right, but again,
Most of your usage is tier 2.
Yes.
right, but
Okay,
that's
now
where, that's, kind of
brings-
where you want it to be.
Right.
At least what we were discussing, we wanted to, people that are really good with water, the single, elderly person, they're not pushing into that middle tier, so they're gonna get their, I don't wanna use the word senior discount, but they're gonna benefit from that lower rate. The people that are typically using water, that's where you wanna have your regular users, you wanna get a good portion of your revenue there, and they're gonna be there, but you're not penalizing them to be there. And then the people that are using a lot more water, you're not killing them, but you're using our system more. It costs us more to keep our system up because you are using more of the system. So we're gonna generate, revenue there.
Is the base charge the same across tiers?
Not included in
Yeah.
these calculations right now.
No, but is it the same across tiers?
It's
Yeah.
just a
Oh, yeah.
single base charge, and then, so it's not each tier is subject, it's just the bill.
Each bill is.
You
Yeah.
just get a flat base charge.
I think before you send us to Paul, it'd probably be smart to add those columns, and just like you said, just for the first cut through,
Yeah.
assume the base charges are the same.
I mean, we
Well,
could,
if he
for
just
pre and
puts, if he
post.
just puts
I
the
could-
value of it under the charges,
I could throw
for
that
my
in.
purposes, I don't need to, it's gonna be really hard to add them in.
I don't know.
What we could do is just whatever the base charge is, just drop it in here.
Well, there's a column there that says semi-annual base, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure, semi-annual, okay, yeah, and this is base. And again, this came off of this started from that.
Yeah.
And so the base was in this, so yeah, I could throw that, take 2 minutes to throw that in. If anyone knows the exact number off the top of their head.
The,
We don't have.
But yeah, it's real easy, and then again, if whatever the base is, assuming we would charge a base on this side too, it's easy to see.
yeah. But you gotta start somewhere, so at the very
Right.
beginning, those base charges should be the same,
Right.
and then we can adjust it.
And then
Right.
we can, all right, we think that this is the percentage, having a meter being connected to our system, what's that value on a quarterly, semi-annual basis?
Yeah.
What's that costing us so that we're collecting that money? So if you're connected to the sewer, we have a base charge, a maintenance charge, even if you aren't connected to the sewer on the sewer side.
So
Right,
along those
so-
lines, we should probably refine our definition of what the base charge is intended to recoup.
Oh, or clarify it, I
Right,
don't know if
yeah.
it's got a definition now, but generally, people talk about it as your fixed cost, but we can go in and look at our fixed costs in the system, and our base charge would be half of the revenue, which isn't, that's gonna really throw things into a kilter, because that doesn't recognize usage as much as you want. But it's still, we gotta look at that number and make, okay, are we collecting enough money to pay for all the readings, pay for all the billing? Because every bill that gets issued is part of this process that's in the base charge. There's a lot of charges costs that go in just to have a meter out there, not even to deal with the other stuff.
Nashua on their bill says meter charge, $20 a month.
Which is, that's the base charge. That's-
Right, and just, I
Kind
mean,
of talking
It
about.
explains it.
A
right,
month?
and I guess I would, base charge, everyone knows what the base charge is. Like here we have, like when you connect to the system, we have a benefit, and it's, 99% of the civilized world calls it a connection fee. We call it a benefit, and then you gotta kind of explain, and then we have a connection fee, and just, so, and that's another thing. If we're gonna revamp this, I'd rather take a little bit of extra time, get it. I'd also like to look at some of these other fees, and, as Paul said, maybe on the wastewater side, maybe we do wanna put in like a base, charge similar to what we do in water, but, maybe, do we want, I don't
Well,
think
it's
it's any.
kind of got a base in it, but it's a damaged, it's not damaged, it's just a very different principle. It's gonna be much harder to convert the wastewater charges, the tiers and stuff over because of that.
Well, we have a
fixed
sewer,
charge for the first X
right.
cubic feet. So if someone uses 1, someone uses 10, they get the same bill.
right,
I would suggest that if we have a base charge, it includes some minimum amount of water. So say you have a property that's shut down, we're still charging a base charge, but if someone comes in and washes something, say, if they use a minimal amount of water, I don't think we should be charging from gallon 1. So the base should include, say, pick a number, 100 gallons a
Well,
year.
yeah,
So-
but I guess it's, they're not gonna get a bill until they flip 100 cubic feet,
So
which is
what's-
70
that's true, too.
750
What's
gallons.
different
That's true,
in
too.
water and sewer, just so the board, just to remind the board, is we currently have a base charge, which, let's say with quarterly, I'm gonna use $20, it's a little bit more than that. But if you use nothing, all you pay is $20. If you use 1 CCF, that proverbial gallon, and just enough to click it, you're gonna pay the $20 base plus the current rate right now, which is like, $2.
Yeah, $2.
Oh, no, that's per 100 cubic feet. So it's gonna be 20 plus, 2 cents.
Well, we don't issue a bill for anything less than 100 cubic feet, correct?
No, we bill by the cubic foot. No one's ever used that little that I'm aware of.
We shouldn't be billing anything under 100 cubic feet.
You know, that's what I'm saying, we should,
I think-
say,
Right, the system is set up to bill by the cubic foot.
That's why, because there's like 3 different terminologies.
current-
All right.
up here.
what I'm saying is, if I get a house shut down, say I'm out of the house for 3 months, I understand I have to pay a base charge.
Yeah,
But if I've got a faucet that goes drip, and a minute later it goes
right.
drip,
So in that drips, and after your quarter, like you say, you use 100 gallons, which if we charge by the CCF, that's not registering, you're not getting a bill. In sewer, it doesn't matter, you're getting whacked with $200 whether you use 0 or you use, for quarterly, it'll be 12 CCF. Doesn't matter, 0 or 12 CCF, you get the same hit. And I think that was another discussion, is maybe we get rid of that tier 1 in wastewater where it goes up to a minimum, and if it's 0 to that, you pay it regardless. Where if we got rid of that, did it more like we did with,
We're gonna end up, we should have the same exact tiers, the same exact methodologies for both
It's
billings.
simple.
right, so we put the base charge, if you will, in for sewer, but there's no more minimums, it's you pay for actually what you use,
Right.
but we get the base every billing cycle.
Right.
I think,
It's gonna be a lot more complex to convert those, to do this process. Just because of the way that they've been billed, because everyone pays, $200 regardless.
right, and I think,
Their
so,
bills, there could be a lot of changes in those bills, because the people that are on the way low end have been paying $200, and they might only have to pay $100.
so on the wastewater side, if we hop to wastewater, it's set up the exact same way. And I picked something that I thought might work. So, we can change all these numbers, we can change the rates, but right now, if you use a 0 in sewer, you're paying like $200.
yearly.
Right, no,
No, per bill.
per bill. So if you go to Florida for a year, you're paying a very, very high bill for 0 usage.
Well, I thought it was, quarterly was half the rate.
Yeah, so it's 100, so you're
Right,
paying
so it's
400 if it's
400, yeah.
quarterly for 0 usage versus, and I'm not opposed to going with the base, is if we went with the base, instead of paying 400, you might be paying 100 if we had a $25, for example. But, I think this is just, kind of gives a little bit of a,
See, these rates are
Picture.
less steep.
right, and I just, again, here I try to, give a little discount for, those who really are trying to conserve the single fixed income elderly, and you shouldn't be using that much. And maybe we drop this down a little bit more. I don't know. It's, again, these ranges is what, the board said, well, let's see what it looks like using these ranges. And this was a starting point. What I tried to do here is, this is what we actually build in calendar 16. I said, okay, what if we had the new rates? What would it be? Which was a 4% increase for sewer, and that's what we would have billed with the rate increase. And again, just for illustration purposes,
Well, wasn't half the year with that rate increase anyway?
it kicked in August, but again, the way the system, so
So maybe a quarter of the year, we got revenue on the
Yeah, maybe.
Well,
This is based on charges, though, it's not revenue, so,
These are billings, yes.
so 5/12 of them will be under the new rate. Should be.
No, because the way it works is the rates went up in August.
Yeah.
So if your, say, quarterly bill comes in September, the system is designed that it will charge 2 months at the old rate, 1 at the new.
Yep.
And so since we're semi-annual, we went up in August, people aren't paying, and we're not seeing the full impact of that for 6 months.
Paying, but we're talking billing here. But
Right, billing, you're not gonna be billed, you're not gonna see the full impact in the billings of the rate increase for 6 months after it's
Correct.
the effective
But
date.
some portion of it.
Yeah, some
I'm
portion.
being
Yep.
nitpicky here.
Yeah,
Because I don't want to, again, as I said, this is a very, we have to be very cautious with this exercise, because we're going from a system that we know, but we're not, we think that we can simplify it, but we have to be very cautious about making this conversion over, so we're not in a place where we're trying to figure out what to do after the fact. We ought to be going forward with the full knowledge that we'll be in as the same place or better, more convenient, so that, we don't have a line of people going, my bill went haywire, what's going on here?
right, and so again, this is, for a sewer, the average change out of all, 1,500 customers is $21. This 29,000
$21 per billing period.
per billing period. The 29,000 was, that was a correction where there was one account in town that, I don't know why it was set up, I don't know who set it up, but it was done, years and years and years ago. They had a fixed rate regardless of their usage. And so if they used a gallon or they used 10 million, it was the same. And so this really, if we take this out, it's 5,000. And I can tell you that's on a customer that right now has that base of 60. So it would be a $20,000 increase, but that's spread over 60 people.
Yeah, it's an increase, though.
Yep,
We have to look at the impact to all the users, so.
Right, so,
And make sure that each user is paying for their use of our system,
and
however that usage
right.
is.
The other thing to keep in mind is, this 5,000, right now, the way it's billed, as we said, I don't think Tom was here, but, so for this particular customer, before they go to the next tier, they take whatever the CCF volume is in tier 1, you times that by 60, and then you go to the next tier.
Okay.
This here says, when you get there, you're going. We're not timesing anything by 60. 1 meter, you're jumping. And so, I personally think, but by doing that multiples of the usage, I think, people are getting pretty good breaks.
Well, I wouldn't call it a break, it could be a misallocation of costs, because they're not paying for their usage of our system. Again, we have to make sure that each
Right.
user, however we define a user,
So,
is a user, an individual in a single trailer, or is an individual, user.
a meter.
A whole mobile home park with several, a lot of people in it, which to us, that's the customer. The individual in the mobile home is not responsible for the bill, it's the larger user. And they need the capacity in their system, they need to have us to have the ability to respond to them in a much different fashion than somebody that's using a lot less. So it likely costs us more to service those.
And a little more in defense, they also pay 60 bases.
Right, no,
So,
So-
it's, on the water side, it's that number, that, if we got rid of the 60 bases, that number would be a little bit closer to equal.
this is a delicate task we have. I know we can get there.
And so, again, I was trying to get at least a working format that was easy to change the numbers, and you don't have to go through and change 37 lines of code. You just do one, and it's all up the top here, and then ditto for water. You know, it's all the formulas in here are all based off of, you know, I used absolute values for everything, and it's, you know, it's comparing, so all you have to do is change some of these numbers up here, and it does everything all the way down. But, you know, I was really trying to focus on all things being
Revenue.
equal, and just with my assigning some value, just a random value, you know, what would it look like? I guess is this kind of what the board was
Well, I think it's a
looking
far
for?
more accurate assessment than taking the revenue from last year, multiplying it by some percent, and, you know, coming up with a projected one.
Right,
This is
and-
a complete overhaul of the billing system. We've not done it since I've been here. I don't know of any town that's completely overhauled its rate system like we're talking about. I mean,
Right, and, you know, we have, you know, currently 5 rates, and it's just, I know when I do abatements, I will spend 30 to 45 minutes, because there are so many
There's no
different.
benefit to 5 tiers. There's no, if we're the city of Boston, there's a benefit to 5 tiers. Here, you know, at best, we might have one user that 5 tiers works, but other than that, it's not even a benefit to them, because you're making changes that only impact them anyway at the end of the day. So we have to simplify this. I mean, there are a lot of communities that only have 1 tier. I think that's the wrong way to go. DEP doesn't like it. You gotta show some evidence that we are encouraging people to conserve water, and that's what you do by having,
well,
you know,
those
escalating
one-tier
rates.
towns will change. The DEP will see to that. I'm thinking about what does the board think about how to roll this out? How to, I mean, if you think about it, we're revamping tiers, we're revamping water and sewer tiers, we're going to quarterly billing, we've got all new meters. This is an awful lot
It's a lot of
for the
turning.
customers to absorb.
I-
We live it and breathe it every day, and we're getting tripped up. I can only imagine how the homeowner's going.
Right.
Timing of the change, I would recommend we do it when we go to quarterly billing. When we're capable of going to quarterly billing.
But it's
That way
public
we don't have to
outreach.
explain quarterly and semi-annual.
Right.
You know,
That's
we,
it.
we don't want multiple moving targets. I mean, we should be able to
In theory,
get
we
the
can do
billing to the point
quarterly
where someone can look at their bill and understand it.
Yeah, what I like to do is I like to go through a couple billing cycles just to make sure, with 100% meter change out, just to make sure everyone's comfortable, and then phase in the quarterly.
Well,
In the
but
phase in the
if-
quarter-
But if we wait for 2, and people aren't semi-annual, that means we're not gonna have.
No,
all-
just two billing, so 2 months. I just wanna
Okay.
issue bills for a couple, 3 months, just to make sure, okay, everything's going smooth.
All right, so again, the end of this year, we could be looking at,
Right, we could be looking,
we could have a couple of hearings. I think we should have a couple of hearings. We have a newspaper article that, we drafted for, them to use some of the information, whatever, so that it can be as clear as possible to people. We encourage people to get here, and we put together a PowerPoint or something that says, here's what's going on, here's where we were, confusing, here's where we're going. It's custom, not customized, but standardized.
I think a communication plan starting early, letting the town know we want to simplify.
Maybe even a flyer in the next bill.
I'm thinking,
Yeah,
We don't say what it is,
Theme-sized.
we just say, we are in the process of reviewing and we will be changing this. And we're
I'll tell
going.
you this, I'm a good test subject here because I'm new to the board, and I know I came in a little late to this discussion, but I'm still confused by this, okay? So,
I've
all right,
done this, so
Yeah.
I can, and I'm pretty good with numbers, so again, this comes to me fast, but I'm looking at it going, there's some numbers that could be changed for clarification. There's a lot of definitions that can go up there, so people can kind of see what's going on, even at the board level and whatnot, and,
if you looked at a bell curve in terms of where our current users are, I mean, 80% gonna fall into that tier 2?
and that's what we can do easily with this.
Yeah.
and I think that was the goal, is to get basically the meat and potatoes of our revenue, if you will, is in that
Yeah.
middle use. And
Yeah.
then, the reason we jumped so high with tier 3 is those are people who are just out watering and really going well above what the average person.
Yep.
And then the lower rates, what I tried to do is, again, for those who may be on a fixed income, elderly, and,
Or people that just like to conserve.
or people who like to conserve. If you can be 20 years old and a millionaire, and if you just conserve, you're gonna get that same benefit. But, you know, it was a way to, try to give some small benefit to those who may be on fixed income and who don't use a lot of water.
And rest assured that the lowest tier will never be low enough, and the highest tier will always be too high to somebody.
Right.
I mean, so you've got to look at the system and the users as a whole, instead and try to thread that needle, knowing, as you said, a bell curve or even like plotting graphs. You got to kind of straight line estimate. There's going to fall on both sides of the curve. You're never going to please everybody or be 100.0%.
But I do think one of our goals should be that whatever tier 2 ends up being, it should be 80% of the units.
Yeah. And that's what I think we just when you walked in, we were adjusting that one number. That's what we're trying to do, saying how do we get
I
this?
can see, we can add a couple of columns to pull that data out so that we can
You can actually see that.
graph it and
Yeah.
say, all right, we have our 0 to 40, 41 to 100, well, it's gotta be 41 to 120.
Yeah.
And that, now people are getting grabbed better, and that's something we can easily add to
Yeah.
this.
That would be good.
Right, and I think
And
we did that.
that's a good goal to have.
In water, we did that where, we changed these numbers and I could put totals down here and it would tell us how many
Well, I guess
units
there's a,
are being billed out of the total units. This the total units, and then if we just summed, these columns, this column, this column, and this column, that would tell you how many total units out of this is being billed in each group.
right.
But the people's bills aren't gonna change much.
Again, on this here,
Our goal is not to have the,
It's what he was showing to begin
right,
with.
when we made here, the average change, and I guess, I know that's, you gotta take that with a grain of
Well,
salt,
that changes every year.
is
a little.
$14.
that's
No.
per bill, so that's.
Per bill.
That's on a semi and
Right,
quarterly bill.
semi-annual and quarter, it's just,
So we might have to look at that as a average total bill, so we may need another column that looks at the total if you're semi or quarterly, and that's easy to, again, it's another
The
column. it's
annual
easy to
total
do.
will be, the change annually.
Yeah.
Right,
right, and I think, so, yeah, and these are per billing cycle. Again, with, on water, we have 7,400 lines of,
it's easy to do, Joe.
okay?
If all the semis are at the top, quarterly's in the bottom, I can have it done in 2 minutes.
It's all like that. The only thing is with new customers, if you're a semi-annual, you could just have one bill. So if I scroll up here,
Oh, yeah,
there'll be
that-
somewhere
yeah.
there real quick.
That's fine.
That's where my Excel,
I
it's.
think the
I work.
interesting, your max and min changes, to your point, yeah, those are significant numbers, but I think the current system now, there's people obviously getting a really good deal and some getting not so good a
Right.
deal, and that may change. There still will be obviously people getting a good deal, may not be the same person that's currently getting the good deal.
And I can say the max change is probably gonna be those customers, probably some of the, trailer parks that
Multiple
have,
users,
Multi-unit,
40 to
Multiple-
60,
right, the multiple units under 1 meter, those are the ones that
right,
are.
because this just assumes 1 meter and you're going to that next tier.
so.
The
so
thing is,
would-
it's very, in my experience, it's fairly rare that they do, they have different groupings for different if you're, you're in Worcester, everyone's got the same rate. Well, virtually everyone's got the same rate. It's one rate, but it doesn't matter if they're a 4-unit, it's 2-unit, 1-unit, they don't make all the
Right,
pieces
and I
up.
think that's
And
what we
would-
should do here in Pepperell.
And that was exactly my question was gonna be, would the board ever consider I don't know what you call it, a commercial or a business rate for multi-unit to try to flatten that curve, that deviation?
Well, generally, you're asking more out of a commercial, but if they're using more honestly, the work, the effort that we have for every individual user has more to do with what the amount that they use and less to do with what's coming out of them. Yeah, a restaurant that's dumping grease, they're gonna be a pain, but, we'll find them if we have to, or something like that, if they're gonna trouble us. We can go beyond what's sitting here if they're causing us issue. At the end of the day, treating wastewater,
There's a lot of, as we know, means to take care of the grease dumpers or
the ones that are,
Right.
that
the
we
problematic.
can't capture the cost in this type of fashion. If they're generating more cost than this table, this scenario
Right.
allows us, we'll create or we'll develop a way that captures their cost or impact to our system. But generally, people that use more, we have to be able to provide them more service, and that costs us more money. So, again, that's part of the tiers.
How would this impact the bills to Groton on the sewer side?
0, right? Well,
I think, yeah, under our current, it's because we're gonna look at total flows and total cost, if they,
they're not linked to this,
Yeah.
scenario at
Right.
this point, so.
But if we ever, I don't know, put in meter pits and build them per unit, which I'm
Yeah,
leaning towards more.
Yeah, no,
it's easy.
I was
We
there
get-
too, you know.
We need 2 meters.
So, no, I think this is an excellent tool because it's flexible and it's quick. And I understand Tom's point because it can be confusing. But it's actually a simplification, maybe more so on the wastewater side because I guess what you're not seeing, if you ever, we probably should have given you a copy of our current rate sheet.
Yeah.
And just, the tiers are just all over the place.
Right, we have like 10 different classifications, and there's 5 tiers in each classification.
And they're all
all
nuances of
different.
one scenario, basically.
Okay.
And when I look at them, I say, it doesn't make sense. I don't know how, like, a 2-family is double a 1-family, but when you go to a 3-family and greater, it's a third of a 1-family, and I
No, they were
Don't
trying.
balance.
They were trying to create a scenario that was as fair to everybody, but it doesn't result in creating fairness. Because at the end of the day, we're servicing, a meter. We're servicing a connection to our system, and the size of that and the amount of use that is, that's what's reflected back on what it costs us to deal with that customer.
And I guess that is a good point too, with having just a single set of rates, not having a commercial rate. Yes, you may pay more because you're up against the tiers, but again, a lot of communities would just charge you higher amounts per tier anyways because you're a business. You're making money off of that. Without the water, you don't have a business.
Well, that's true, but you also, without the business, you don't have the tax revenue,
right.
okay?
Yeah.
So,
And then,
No, I would say strictly from a water standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, some water systems say if you're a business,
yeah.
you pay a higher rate.
And do we do that today or not?
No.
no,
Okay.
it's
And we
all
don't
the
plan
same.
to.
And, another thing I find is that in looking through, there could be like a 4-family house, and when you look at the address, well, they have 4 apartments up above, but on the first floor, it's all commercial. At 1 meter, and so they, they're being billed as a 4, but, should
Now you're
that be?
arguing,
How much it is.
how many units are you? Well, you only have 1 electric meter on the outside of the building, so you're 1 unit, or 5. And we don't need those arguments. You got 1 meter, we service 1 meter.
And,
So
and I
you
guess,
service 1 meter and you pay for usage.
Right.
And you keep it simple.
right, and we don't worry about, are you a 2-family, a 3-family? It really, really makes it confusing.
Yeah.
And I guess that's an important thing to mention here is, in the new scenario, it's assumed that 1 meter, you would instantly go to the next tier. It's like the trailer parks, this person with a $4,000 change, I can almost bet that person, if you look at their bill, before they go to the next tier, where there's a factor of X in there, before they jump tiers.
Yeah.
Here, it's when you get to, in this case, 4,000 or 40 CCF on a semi-annual bill, you're jumping.
Yep.
In the other case, you gotta get to
40
400
times the number of
CCF.
units. You need to get to
Again,
40
and
CCF
again,
for each
How
unit.
do you compare a 1-unit studio apartment with a 5-bedroom house? They look the same in our current billing process, but they really aren't the same.
But the 5-bedroom
So-
house, in theory, is gonna be generating more.
But we look at the billing process and
Right.
and the ways that the bills are generated are identical under the old premise. Well, no, not the mobile home gets divided by 60 if there's 60 of them
Right.
in the park. So they're looked at as 1/60th of what a studio separate, or a single-family house that has 2 bedrooms. So again, how do we gotta create.
Well, what do you do with that 1/60th calculation today? I mean,
We take the tier step
Yeah.
and multiply it by 60, so you don't go to the next tier till you're 60 times that tier level.
Right, so in sewer, for example,
So you're
tier
assuming every one
one,
of those units is gonna hit that tier.
sure.
So and if you have people there who are conserving, we're getting a disservice to us.
Yeah.
or if you're only 80% full, those 20 units, that's all.
But even on a more simplified basis, if you have a 2-family house and you decide you're not gonna rent out the second half, but you can use up to twice the tiers before you trip it.
Yep.
So you can water your lawn till the cows come home and your neighbor's gonna probably trip the tier before you.
So is the most compelling argument for a tier system as opposed to a flat rate conservation?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that the only argument?
Well, no, there's the argument that someone using more has a greater demand of your resources.
Which
So somebody
reason?
that's using 10 cubic feet and a quarter,
Yeah,
all right, they're only putting out a little bit, a couple toilet flushes a day, and they're
Yeah.
washing some dishes.
yeah.
House next door is using 10 times that. So they're putting a greater demand on your system.
Yeah.
They're drawing more water in, they're discharging more water. So there's a higher level of service required by you.
Explain that to me, though. What resources are they consuming more of? I mean, they're
Uh,
consuming more of
No,
water.
no, it's their draw on those resources.
Okay.
So one of the premises with water, and I'm not an expert in this, but I have some experience.
Sure.
When you're doing a water connection to the main, they say your water connection is based on the size, and it's escalating. So a 1-inch tap is like $500, a 2-inch tap is $2,000, and you get it to an 8-inch tap. And that's because they have the ability to draw from your system a whole lot more water. So now you have to beef up your system in order to do that. So now you have to have all these other resources in place so that when they open their 8-inch line, it's there for them, because
Okay.
you have guaranteed them that much water at that point. So when you have people that are, and I'm just extrapolating, when you have people that are using, their line is the same size to the single bedroom house and the 5-bedroom house.
Yeah.
Their line's likely the same, but that 5-bedroom house is drawing harder on your system because they're using 5 times the more water.
All right, I don't want to bog the discussion down, but help me. So tell me what you do, all right, to make sure the resources are there. What is it you actually
Well,
do?
it's staffing, it's having chemicals, it's all those other pieces that are,
Well, what-
require you to make, to make water,
All right,
so that that water is available for them. You're having more spare parts around, you're having more stuff around than you would ordinarily. If you have a very small water system,
yeah.
you wouldn't have as much stuff around. So the more draining, the more ups and downs that you have to deal with relative to the drainage resources on your system, the more staff, the more things that you have to be able to respond to those things.
So,
And this is the argument that I've heard. I'm just,
it's all right, no,
Yeah.
so
and
I
can
would look
picture
at that
this. I'm
as
not-
something called
not
cost
just-
of goods sold, right? The direct costs of producing the water. Okay, not administration, not anything else. It's actually the direct costs of producing the water. Do we understand what the cost of goods?
Fairly low when you look at our budget. It's fairly low.
Right, and I guess to produce would be the cost to pump
Yeah.
and the cost to add chemical.
And, well,
And then-
labor and electricity but, because the labor, you need people to
Right,
monitor the
right, to do
system.
that, so
there
it'd be,
is-
but the electricity, I kind of throw that into, the cost to
Well,
pump and
labor is
get it.
overhead, right?
Yeah, but the size of the system sets the amount of staff that you have. The amount of water you're producing has some relationship to the amount of staff you have. So
Okay.
there is a labor component outside of administration. Administration and billing, yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
no-
direct labor, okay, I can see that, direct labor component.
vehicles,
Yep.
the vehicle to get to your sites, but, somewhat parts. But when you look at the expenses, there's a huge part of our budget is capital. And that capital is associated with, having the tanks and the pipes and all that other stuff, that's associated with getting it to the customer, but it's not producing the water necessarily.
But do you need more trucks? Let's say our population increases by 10% and the water consumption increases by 10%, are we gonna need more trucks?
Need more wells.
Well,
Okay, so if
you
it
might need
increase,
more wells, okay, I can understand that, but I mean,
Which is more facilities, which could require more people. Generally, 10% isn't something that's gonna push you around, but.
Yeah.
if we go to 50%, we may need a couple extra people, because now there's gonna be more maintenance requirements. We may need another vehicle, and again, it's 10%, I agree with Paul, probably not 50%, maybe we would have to get a couple extra bodies, and
We might
maybe
need to
one
provide
extra
more
vehicle.
storage.
maybe what I'll do is take the discussion offline, I can go meet with him and we can kind of look and figure out, at least in my mind, what the actual direct costs are.
But also, I mean, I know we were kind of quick to dismiss it. I take very seriously DEP and the tiers for conservation. It's
Yes.
it's a
No,
fact of
it's-
life.
Yep.
The regulators
Mandated.
say
Yep.
in our withdrawal permit,
Virtually
you will
mandated.
have
Okay, it's not
penalties
a
in
law.
place for excessive,
No.
what we
It-
consider to be
Paul.
excessive consumption.
On that.
No, I wasn't trying to dismiss
No,
conservation.
no, no, you, I know you weren't, you asked
I was
questions, I
trying
thought
to-
we were pretty quick to dismiss it. I find it a very real cost
Yeah.
and a very real need. Because it's part of our withdrawal permit.
I
don't
was
take
just
it
trying to
lightly.
understand that is a great goal. Conservation is a great goal to have, and we should be encouraging that. But I was trying to understand, what's the real cost of expanding, my use, okay? Just for my own benefit.
And I guess, I don't know if Paul's had the same experience, I found, what's the cost to produce a gallon of water? It's really hard to determine, so, I typically
Well,
would say,
if-
it costs me X to produce 1,000,000 gallons of water, or 500,000 gallons of water. And that's like a daily production.
Right,
So
but
what's
we-
it cost me to produce water?
Produce what, 400,000 or 500,000 gallons a day? If we produce
day.
501,000, it's inconsequential, you wouldn't know.
Or if we do
Or if you did 600,000.
600.
Yeah.
Your electricity go up, your chemicals go up, but beyond that, there wouldn't be big changes.
So I guess we could
So,
say,
it is fairly modest.
Yeah.
You look at MWRA, their costs are all fixed, they're huge in terms of debt service and just overhead people and stuff like that. So when their usage changes, on the water side, their water has their usage has gone down, so the rates have had to increase, skyrocket up,
Because it's all fixed.
because it's all fixed costs.
Yeah.
I guess we could do like a daily cost, in the course of a day, we can,
I'm less interested in the dollars and more interested in what are the actual components of the cost, okay? And we can have this discussion another time. I'm just interested in what are the components that go into producing, right? And the same on the wastewater side. Because, I think if you understand that, there is a cost of goods sold, right? And then there is everything else. So if you understand the cost of goods sold, and maybe that becomes the basis for your base prices, and the cost of goods sold. So, I don't know. But let's not bog down this discussion. I'm sorry to pull us away from that.
I
No,
think
it's all
it's
relevant.
all related.
It's all
It's
relevant.
super relevant, because, people.
It's why we're having this
Yeah.
discussion.
And-
If we're gonna go to these
If
extremes.
we went to a fixed cost scenario where, you had that quarterly cost that was fixed, 90% of the cost would probably sit there. So everyone would have this base 90% bill, and, someone using 1 cubic foot or 100 cubic foot would be paying almost the same bill. If we did it purely, you have a meter, there's 3,000 meters, we divide all our fixed costs around the 3,000 meters, everyone pays whatever it is, $300 a year, it's a way to do it. It's just very unconventional.
Yep.
And it's not so much fair in the scenario that, somebody that's not really impacting our need to have a big water system, is paying as much as someone that is impacting
Sure.
the water system.
'Cause, I mean,
In a
and
much
it's a
greater
bit of a
fashion.
chicken and egg discussion too, in that our system is sized based on what we felt was a need, and DEP's approved our withdrawal permit, but with that came a mandated level of staffing to produce that, what they feel based on your gallons,
Yep.
you need to have. Could we do it with one less person? Maybe.
Yep.
We have with people on vacation, obviously
Sure.
it can be done.
Yeah.
The regulators say, no, you must have these people on staff.
Right, and I think
to do
part of
that.
that is
So
when
it's a fixed
someone's on
cost.
vacation, if you're already starting one less, and now they go on vacation, now you have two less.
Yeah.
And so I think part of it is not to operate on a skeleton crew, but, you know,
No, I'm
have,
saying
have
the-
the resources.
The DEP mandates, you know,
Right.
you're a grade 6 treatment plant, you will have this many, they will approve your staffing plan. You will have this many people working on that system.
That's amazing.
Not up for discussion, they will tell you.
That's amazing.
And I think, you know, private companies get away with it where, well, yeah, we have thousands of people, but on any given day, we're gonna put the absolute bare minimum we can to just squeak by and give you the minimal service. And I think that's another thing is when things go wrong, it's, you know, we're here for immediate response.
So anyways, you're right, not to beat it, because again, I don't want to get really wound up since, you know, you want to take a crack at it. Obviously, this needs some tweaking. I think this is a great,
No, this is exactly.
A great
I
what
think
First
this
salvo.
is, yeah, a good starting point, and,
and we've
this-
got time. Obviously,
Yeah.
we don't really need to hammer it out, and I agree. I think it might have been your suggestion, Bill, about rolling this out with the switch to quarterly, to, you know, maximize the impact, minimize the confusion, and give us time, as Tom said, to create
do it
some
all
kind of
at once, so we
communication
don't have
plan.
to issue
Right.
two rates.
Yeah, also
I think we've got
changes-
a good solid communication plan to really.
Change is hard to manage, and if you can make one change, you know, make
Exactly.
it. All right, to change something, to change the billing cycle, and then go back and change the rate, you know, do it all at once. I agree with him.
But if
And-
we are
and-
looking to roll this out, you know, fall scenario, and we're semi-annual bills, we wanna warn people, we may wanna put a mailer out, you know, in the next bill cycle to say, hey, this is ongoing, we're gonna be changing to quarterly rates, we're gonna be changing the tiers around, you know,
I agree with
just
that.
stay tuned, we don't, you know.
Right.
You also have to realize, as soon as you put that out there, there's gonna be the person out there that wants to know more information.
And
Come
And
to a
if,
meeting.
and if we
We'll
don't,
have-
And we'll tell
but if
them
we
what
don't
know.
have it yet,
If,
you know.
if we need to, we'll have 2 hearings on this, and I think we put something into the newspaper, and we'll do a PowerPoint up here, and, you know, a whole bit.
The reason I recommend we
All
do
the
it, we're
bills
gonna
have the
quote,
dates, that, the last reading, the new reading, so it might not be their usual 6 months, it might be a 4 months or a 3-month reading.
or a 1-month read, and that's gonna be the thing is,
There'll be
when
that
this
first
rolls
period
out,
adjustment.
someone's gonna get a bill for 6 months, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And someone getting it for 1 is gonna say, I just got my bill.
Right.
You know, what are you doing? And, I've gone through a quarterly to a, monthly, and, you know, for the first 2, 3 months, and then there'll be those 1 or 2 years later saying, well, when did this happen? Well, 2 years ago. No, it didn't, I've always, and,
The bank paid money.
yeah.
But no,
But, yeah, it's, I agree, if you do one little change or a really big change with 3 or 4 components, you're gonna get almost the same
Right.
feedback.
Yeah.
I just, at some point, we've gotta explain this to people. To we in this room that discuss water all the time, this is a difficult concept.
Yeah.
Okay, when you explain it to someone out there that doesn't have the math background, hasn't been exposed to this, this is gibberish,
Right,
all right? So you've got to be able to explain this in a clear manner.
Right.
Now, when you're dealing with, you're trying to explain it with quarterly billing and semi-annual billing, it's just something else that confuses it.
and
So
then-
when we get to quarterly billing, it's a little easier to explain, it's standardized, it's, you know, everybody's on this.
I think the nightmare is gonna be the collapsing consolidation of the sewer tiers to mimic the water. I mean, it makes sense with a simple statement like that. I don't know that you wanna get into a detailed
I
discussion.
think what you do is just say, bill was developed using, and we have that little card you have, and you post that card up there. Here's what we had to develop your bill
Yeah.
in the past.
And here's what we have now.
And here's what we're going to be basing your bill on. And it's gonna be very simple. We're gonna keep these tiers fairly, we're not gonna go 41 to 65. We're gonna, whatever those numbers are, they're gonna be fairly, uniform numbers, so people go, all right, I get that. I get what that number is. And we give them just, I can see a 10-page PowerPoint, here's a way to go through it.
Did you keep the same tier breakpoints as well? I know there's 3 tiers, water and sewer, but are the
Identical.
breakpoints are the same?
Identical.
Oh, that would.
They probably aren't now because we
No,
changed
right,
water,
but
but
no, that's.
and if I don't save this and I have the original back,
Yeah.
but, yeah, I tried to just, the exact same to keep everything.
Okay.
You know, we have 5 tiers in water now, we have 5 in sewer. I went both three, all the break points are the same, everything is identical.
No, the principle of bill development should be identical between the two, so that, you know, when someone's questioning their water bill, you don't have to answer a separate set of questions for their sewer bill.
So you
Is the
can,
wastewater volume per household tied to the water meter?
yes,
Usage, water
yeah,
usage?
yeah, it's billed gallon for gallon.
Okay.
And so, to your point, Bill, too, I mean, I just throwing this out there, in the last couple of years, between, you know, the rate hearing, the wrapping up of the meter program, the timing of the billing, I'm almost thinking January 1st, would that be a doable target?
To go to quarterly,
Quarterly and the tier changes, first of the year, any new rate adjustment? Kind of wrap it up in one big bow?
possibly.
Like,
I wouldn't want to say
I know
yes
you shoot
now.
for
and-
June-ish, you know, June, July for.
I think if we're gonna wait until we get everything, if we did a fiscal year, it would be fiscal 19. I would wait a year and a few months, or possibly we could do it as of January 2018. I don't see we can do it any sooner
We
than
can't
that.
do it January
That's what we just
17th.
said.
Right,
That's what he
right,
said.
right. January 18 would be the absolute earliest.
January of
Yes.
18.
Correct.
I mean, to the extent that we don't have to do a rate increase on the current tiers, and, you know, do we do one in July, and then, you know, we're now doing a completely different thing in January? It would be good to just have it all happen at once, as opposed to.
So just hold off on the rates
Well,
instead of.
only if we
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
Again, this is, you know, we have to understand where we are financially. We can't, you know, go into the red because of.
No, I think we can,
But we don't need to discuss that now.
Right.
It's just that as we get closer to understanding the end of this fiscal year, I hate to, again, change. If we can just do one.
yeah,
And that way, it's easier we got two things going on. We have, you know, because these tiers are gonna be different no matter what they are, the actual tier volumes and stuff. So it'd be easier to say, look, we simplified them and we created new tiers. And that's why your bill is different. You know, it's just gonna happen, as opposed to your bill changed because this happened, and now we changed the tiers, and the bill changes again, and why did my bill change again? Because you just changed it. And I just think it would make more sense to do it all.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
much more simple terms, and that, you know, obviously, worst case, we're billing twice a year, best case, 4 times a year now. Even if we took another year, I mean, I'd like to be able to, almost like the cable companies, put an insert saying, you know, January 1st, 2018, your billing's changing, like, you know, Channel 7's going away. Give them enough reminders that it's coming, and list the references, you know, here's our website, here's a small video on it, here's a video to the hearings that we had, here's a newspaper article.
yeah,
Give them plenty of time to absorb it. That way, when it does come, listen, we've been rolling it out for 15 months.
and I think on that, Ken, it's, you know, that might be an argument to maybe even hold back till the next fiscal year,
So
when that
July-
begins
July
July
1,
18.
2018.
And-
If we can withstand it on a rate side, if
And I
not,
think-
then I'm a little more anxious about not addressing the rate this year. We'd have to really look at it hard.
And I think to make this a little more, like Bill had said earlier, is if I can get 3 or 4 bill cycles, then we can more closely mirror this. Here's a quarterly,
Yep.
here's what your new bill's gonna look like, and
That's
there's
a good point.
no,
Yep.
is it quarterly or is it semi-annual? If I can go through a couple, 3 quarterly billings,
Also, now that everybody has a new meter, they're gonna be expecting something to happen. They've seen the meters installed.
yeah.
It's not gonna be a big surprise.
And I guess quarterly billing, just so the board's aware, is, you know, right now, we do, on semi-annual, we do approximately 1/6 of the town every month, and so you get 2 bills. The plan, when we go to quarterly, is to do the whole town
Sure.
4 times a year, so
Yeah.
instead of having 12 billing cycles, we have
8
4.
months of the year, we won't be billing.
Right,
I guess, why are we converting everyone over to quarterly, like, in September or
again, I wanna make sure all the meters are in, and I wanna make sure that we have a couple flawless billing cycles versus trying to switch and, oh my God, we have an issue here.
No, but, so technically, everyone's gonna be quarterly. We're not rolling out, we're not gonna keep people semi-annual. We're gonna convert people quarterly before we even do this.
So I think we should test run the quarterlies and then.
No, I know, but
Roll it all
the way,
at the same time.
I guess, virtually everyone's gonna have a meter.
But that's two changes.
All right,
That's two changes again. I think we should go
So-
quarterly
so-
and the new billing tiers at the same time.
Just for,
If they have one
sake of
question, they're
argument.
gonna have two.
we're gonna, let's say August, we get all the hard-to-get people in, now we're 100% changed over in August. I would like to run through a couple, so maybe September, October, even November,
Yeah.
just to make sure, okay, everything goes smooth. At that point, I'd be ready to make the switch to quarterly.
So December 1st, you could do a round of billing, everyone's quarterly at that point.
With the old tier rates, and then in July, we're gonna
Right.
rock their world again with new tiers. I
Well,
think
that's
it's,
why we need to discuss this through, because I thought,
yeah.
because so, because
And so-
to me,
I
it
understand
doesn't
what
make
Joe's
sense.
saying, it's a complex change when you're
Right.
mixing both of those together.
Well, come
There's a
September,
lot.
you'll have a better idea of how far along things are going.
Because if we don't convert them to quarterly, we're still gonna be, in this messed up metering reading schedule where we're doing one book, which I guess we can, but it's just, it's gonna take away the benefit of putting in the new meters. We put the new
It's gonna
meters in
delay
so
the
that we
benefit.
can.
Right, it's gonna delay the benefit until we get to quarterly. The other thing is with quarterly billing, a point that was made is, do we wanna try to coordinate with when tax bills go out so that you're not getting your tax bill and the quarterly bill at the same time? Could we offset that by a month or two? So, it's not a big deal to find out when she does her taxes, but, it's just, I wanna make sure we get it right. And so it's possible we can start ramping up the quarterly billing by, the first of the year. I just,
But-
my gut says
but
that
again,
might
we
be a
don't-
little aggressive.
we
We're
don't
gonna be
wanna-
explaining bills, okay? I think if you're gonna explain the bill, I think the change in the rates and the billing at the same time is gonna reduce the amount of administrative time you spend explaining stuff to customers.
Right, and I wanna make sure, like we've been saying here, I wanna make sure that we're comfortable when we make this, that when someone calls up, okay, here's what happened, we went to quarterly billing, and we changed the tier structure, so here's how you figure your bill out. And I think, we're also looking at changing the whole look of the bill, that will help address a lot of calls, so we have that. If we go to this would be really, really easy to explain on the back of the bill, here's how your bill is calculated.
I look forward to the day that this is really, really, really easy to explain.
And so do I, because again, when I do abatements, I spend so much
Yeah.
time.
Yep,
There won't be any more.
But
That's okay by me.
something to think about, certainly.
So anyway, I guess the whole, purpose of this was at least to get a working document that we can now start to manipulate.
We have a model. It's a good model.
Joe, something I would recommend on this is I look around this, it took me a while to figure out what I was looking at because a lot of numbers up there don't have units on them.
Right.
And you're also mixing 3 units,
Right, and
so we gotta try and standardize it so that,
I can do it up
That
the
would
top.
help.
It's just when I was breaking things up, I think easier in CCF or HCF as some
I
people.
personally, I don't care which unit you use as long as
It's one.
Yeah,
it's one unit we're playing with.
since we bill in cubic feet, I'll convert everything to,
No,
We bill in 100 cubic feet, we bill in units. The unit is 100 cubic feet.
well,
we're going to bill in 100 cubic feet, okay? We shouldn't be issuing a bill for anything less than 100
Well,
cubic feet.
We translate and bill in 100 cubic feet units, correct?
no. Your readings are done in, when you get your bill, and for those of you here in Pepperell, when you get your bill, look at your readings are done in 100 cubic feet, but your usage is in cubic feet. And people call and say, how do you do this? The numbers don't add up. And the first time I looked, I said, gee, you're right. I had never seen such a thing. So
Meters reading.
readings, your prior and your current reading is in 100 cubic feet, but when it shows your usage,
It's in cubic
next,
feet.
it's in
Right, but
cubic
we're
feet.
still not billing
We add 2
1
zeros to
cubic
it.
feet, we're still,
Still billing
We're
to the
billing
two
nearest.
zeros on the end.
Yeah, we're still
Right.
billing to the nearest 100 cubic feet.
But
We're
when
not
it,
truly billing in cubic feet.
but when it calculates, it's calculating a
Right,
cubic
'cause you
foot
have to
rate.
put in this decimal .04
Right.
number, which
Right.
isn't a normal published rate, because people publish rates in 100 cubic feet or 1,000 gallons, you know.
Right.
But
however-
Everything we
bill
have out
scenario
there
with
is
the drip-
all in, on the website, everything is in a cubic foot, which drives me crazy, because it's like, it's this teeny number, and,
But the bill scenario with the drip, 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 he's not gonna see an actual bill for consumption till down the road when he finally trips 100 cubic feet. He's gonna get billed for a unit.
based on what kind of meter you have. Therein lies the issue with the meters.
Right.
And right now, it's, everything's being reported in cubic feet. And we can read in cubic and then convert it to 100 to make it simpler. But, you know, that's all something we can do later. I personally prefer 100 cubic foot
Well,
units.
the
Well,
meters
for the
are,
purpose of this model, right, what unit are we gonna standardize on?
We're gonna standardize on 100.
100.
And we're gonna
Okay, good.
put the tiers in 100.
Yeah, we'll do everything in
'Cause
100.
When
just-
someone goes and looks at the rates in another town over,
Yep.
why is mine only 4 cents, you know? No.
Yeah.
Everyone, virtually everyone is in 100 cubic feet.
Okay, and again, that's real easy to,
Yeah, no, it's just
I guess-
cleaning it up a little.
yeah, we'll have to go and like change, like some of these, I may have to change them. Before I send it out, I'll make sure that everything jives and,
Don't worry about it.
Everything's labeled.
Don't worry about it.
all right, I decide if I change it,
Whatever you wanna do,
everyone's
just
working
send it
off
to
the
me at
same
some
thing.
point.
Okay,
and then I'm gonna do my thing.
okay.
right. So are we done with the
I think so. Any more?
half-hour discussion on water's tiers and?
An hour and a half. you know.
Now you know why I gutted the rest of the agenda?
Yeah, no, and
It is a complex subject with a lot of
It is.
variables.
It is.
this is what most people are gonna be interested in.
Yep.
Exactly.
Now you can probably put a few more titles up here if you want, and that just might
Yeah.
even confuse it more.
Well, you need to know what each column is.
Exactly. You should have a column title for everything you got.
Some of it can be hidden anyway.
Right, so like this can be hidden, because this
You
is,
don't wanna hide the stuff above it, so again, it's
right.
a little bit of format.
right, and this we can just move stuff around, that's easy enough. Okay, I will,
What do you wanna do?
get it out. Would anyone else like a copy?
Sure, send me a copy.
Okay. Okay,
Good. We done with the overhead?
yep. I'm just gonna close this out.
Oop, don't pull the flag over.
I don't think there's been any significant changes at wastewater plant, Bemis Road, Groton IMA, staff recruitments since the last meeting, so unless there's any questions.
Well, just the Groton IMA, you had another meeting 2 weeks ago. Was it more productive, less productive? Did we make any headway?
It was probably,
Backwards.
it was a few steps backwards. Before I came, I was speaking with my wife, and I think we've been working towards a fair solution, and they agree that it's a fair solution, but they want want to keep cutting back, and it's like, you can't take away from fair, because that makes it unfair. You know, and they're having, and so they keep kind of cutting at the edges, and it was like, just, can you be very clear with all the things that you're looking to make sure that this does? Because I was hearing, you know, well, we want a factor for this, and so things were getting really complicated, and it wasn't going to be a simple system that we set out to start with. And so, you know, hopefully we have a meeting tomorrow morning where we can get that clarity, because they were going to get us some clarity this week, and it didn't happen.
My impression is that they're trying to do the opposite of what we just explained. I think they're trying to get 5 tiers in their rates, and they've got 1 now. I think they're trying to slice the salami so thin that we're trying to make it fair, equitable, defensible, something that the staff, including the, billing clerks, you just don't need to spend a ton of time. And then it's got the true up at the end, which is the true, fairness, the ultimate fairness adjustment.
But they're looking to add a couple of factors, which now makes it, you got to subject to review your formula every year to make sure those factors are appropriate.
Yeah.
Because you create a factor based on a scenario today, but those scenarios can change over time, and that factor really is only to create. It doesn't create a balance. Doesn't create fairness.
It concerns me that nothing's gone down on paper yet, because at that point, what everybody remembers and takes away from a meeting, everybody's got a slightly different take on it.
Well, we've given them stuff, and we've asked for comment on it, which up to this point has been verbal comment to the extent of, yeah, we agree we want something simple, we agree we want something fair. And then the last meeting it was, well, we liked what we got, but we don't agree with all these, and then they started kind of mashing the numbers around to their benefit, of course. And it was like, okay, and all of a sudden, well, we want to worry about this, and I said, well, can you just give us a complete list of all the worries you have? Because I don't want to sit down in every meeting and have you unhappy, because we had this distinct feeling that it was almost like it was like a used car deal, and, the guy was passing, and they have a number in mind already. And I said to him, what's your number? Oh, we don't have a number. Well, then why can't we go through this process and, here's what our number develops. This is our process. What's wrong with it? Well, we don't like it. We want to trim off. Well, trimming off, it doesn't create a fair system. It doesn't. So it was like grappling with 2 tigers, or in the room, and it was like, can we know what all the tigers are? So that
for 2 weeks, we thought we had an excellent, or 2 meetings, an excellent progress, and everybody's nodding in agreement. And then the last one was, let's do a sensitivity analysis, which is, I guess, water sewer speak for statistics. And you know how you can play numbers with statistics, and depending on how you tweak that sliding scale of sensitivity, like suddenly it's really unfair. It's like, well, look what you did to the sensitivity.
Right.
I can do it the opposite way, make it look so fair that you'll be sick. But we tried to be, fair. It's like, this is,
right.
Here's our real numbers. Here's our real data. Here's our real costs. Here's the real flows. Here's the real billing we've been sending you. Here's how the bill could work. And, much like we just did here, your bill shouldn't vary much at all, if any. I mean, you're going to be right there, except
right now, if it's a wet year, their bill goes up.
Yeah, we treat more year.
Doesn't mean that our costs go up, but their bill goes up. If it's a dry year, their bill goes down, and we don't necessarily collect the right revenue. So, again, it was a very simple idea, and again, they want to trim at the edges. Oh, well, we don't use this thing. Well,
yeah.
But that doesn't matter that you don't use that. You're part of our system.
How many hours a week does that person work at the plant work on the purple system as compared to the Groton system? It's like, really, we're going to have
So I worked
bracelets on the guys now.
I went home and I created this crazy spreadsheet.
It was great.
But it shows how far we can go from. My formula had 3 numbers in it, and now the spreadsheet's got 150 numbers in it. And every single number is now going to be subject to debate, as opposed to the numbers that I was proposing were hard, fast, fixed numbers. They exist. And now we're not, oh, well, somebody's timesheet was, oh, no, we don't need to look at timesheets. Well, then how are we gonna know that number's right? You know, and we don't even record this
Well,
data.
On Tuesdays, we're only 72.7% of the flow in that pipe. We only want to pay for what we use. And I think the point that they're missing, and I mentioned this to Paul several times, is, you know, it's like joining a big box store. You know, you get the benefit of the bulk buying, but, you know, there's a cost to joining. And that cost is you've got this system, you've got this incredible staff, this incredible work ethic, and there's an ancillary cost, value-added cost, if you will. And they're just ignoring that. We want to pay penny for penny for exactly the services a la carte. It's like, well, no. You can't afford to go a la carte unless you've got, you're adding options. Before you can add options to a car, you got to buy a car. You can't just pay for the options.
Well, and this is like the similar argument with the individual user that we were making. You know, just because we're not spending, 100 hours a week working on a pipe that they run doesn't mean that there isn't a capacity there when it happens that we need to do that. But we only want you to spend that way. But that's not how we allocate costs. It's not how costs are generated in our system. We have staff that are available and are required to be there to respond to these types of items. I mean, we had a discussion of the siphons. They didn't want to, they have a couple of siphons. They're very expensive pipes. We can talk about them sometime offline. They're a pain in the butt. And we had ours cleaned, and it cost us $25,000. Huge amounts of money. And we offered their services up for they have a siphon. And they're like, no, we can't afford that. But their connections use all of our siphons in town, and they're a major portion of the flow through those siphons. But all of a sudden, it's like, well, you paid for this. We don't want to, So it costs us a lot of money to maintain these things, but it's like they don't want to acknowledge that. They want to worry about, the pipes that they don't use. But we don't bill, somebody that's on a dead-end road, based on how far they are from the plant. Everyone gets billed the same because they're all part of a system, and the system exists because everyone's there. They're like, well, we're only these two pipes, and we barely use them. No, you're 50% of the flow. You're 100% parts of it. And so it was just this silly argument that, trying to go from simple, we went 2 or 3 steps back, and hopefully tomorrow morning this is the short version.
Well, it sounds
Sorry,
to
Bill,
me-
it's a short
it sounds
version.
to me
I
that they're
know
trying to
it's-
understand the cost of goods sold, all right? All right, and they don't want to pay the overhead rate.
Right.
But the overhead rate is real,
Is real.
okay? So, so they want to pay just for the service they're using and not the overhead. And I think that, the system won't work without the overhead, and you need to tell them that.
You can't buy the air conditioning and the spare tire without buying the car.
Yeah.
I know you just want the air conditioning, but you need a car to put it in.
I sit in the passenger seat, I don't use a steering wheel.
That's exactly.
That's almost
That's
an argument they're making.
That's a really good one, because
What the
we're
real
driving.
argument, what the real argument is the car really only costs this much to make, okay?
Mhm.
But it costs this much to transport to the dealer, it costs this much to, all the overhead. That's why you're paying the list price, and it's the overhead that they're arguing against. And until you convince them that there is an overhead right here, okay, they're gonna continue to go after you, for the cost of goods.
This is we're talking dollars at the edges here. I don't like to fight about dollars. It doesn't make sense to create a system that costs $10,000 a year to implement if you're going to save $2.
Yeah.
And they hear me, but they don't. They still, I won't pay because I don't use that thing. Well, but it's part of the system. It's what's required. It's what it takes to get everybody's sewage to our treatment plant. Well, that's not the spirit of the agreement. Well, that's not how I read it. But anyway, enough of that.
Good luck tomorrow.
Just remember that we have the ball. They don't play the game unless we bring the ball, so.
Well, as we see it, for them to manage their own wastewater, manage their own collection system, the costs that they would pay would double, at least. And if they were go to another community, they'd have to invest huge amounts of money to do that. And I don't look at that as a threat. I don't want that, because what happens, the efficiency that's gained by having both communities together go away. And now we're looking at, changes in our rates and changes in our staffing in order. So it's better for us to be together, and to fairly split these costs, but they just, again, it's, you know, that person sitting over at that table over there, eating that meal, I don't want to pay to have their fork cleaned, you know, or the steering wheel, you know.
That's a great one.
No, it's a good one. So they want to ride in the car, but I'm not using the AC, so, you know, I want a little bit of a benefit.
So,
Moving on.
couple of quick miscellaneous things. First one, I want to just mention is road opening permits. We've never talked about this in town before, but you know, Peter and I do talk about this, and it's getting to be that season. And over the last couple of years, and specifically, we had a couple issues last fall, and we've had some issues regarding driveways throughout town, and we're requesting that the board consider, for the first time since I've been here anyways, amending the existing right-of-way permit conditions to reflect these changes. Specifically, we want the ability to control and regulate runoff that's being directed onto the public way by requiring the permittee to submit a plan to us to show us how they plan to mitigate these situations, and giving the highway superintendent or his designee, myself, approval authority over that. And then the other issue we've got is it's primarily common drives, which is kind of a different animal because that's a special permit, but we do have private drives in town, dirt driveways, that tend to, through lack of maintenance on the homeowner's part, tend to deteriorate at the edge of the paved public way. So you've got that apron in the right-of-way that's still dirt. So we would like to require that at least the apron portion within the town's right-of-way be a paved apron, and then they can taper off into dirt, gravel,
Well,
stone.
that way, if it's falling apart, it's
It's on their property,
not
and
the-
we're not losing our
the right-of-way
roadway.
that's falling apart.
Not eating at the edge of the road is what you're
So,
trying to say.
you know, and so existing driveways certainly could be grandfathered from compliance until such time as that they're either, you know, repaired, relocated, reconstructed, and then, you know, you need to come up to current standards with that. I put in your packets copies of, that's just downloaded from the website, the current
Permit.
So,
the regulation, and the first one I highlighted there is, just so you know, it is in the code of the town of Pepperell, section 152.5, requires that a permit be sought for excavation or opening, altering a public way. And then what you see, you know, it requires a permit, and the second document is just a copy of the permit, where on the second page of that, we just create a simple box where the permittee, and it doesn't have to be design engineered. It could be something simple.
aren't these two different things, though? Because an excavation in the right-of-way is a street
We treat driveway permits as an alteration of the right-of-way. It may not be excavation per se. The bylaw covers everything.
So this bylaw covers both animals?
Yes.
Opening for
Trenches,
installation?
catch basins, utilities,
Because I see
driveways.
both terms being used, and
Yeah.
and you know I have my issues with the the excavation side of things, where we issue permits and then they don't put the utilities where they said they were gonna put them.
Mhm.
Which, you know, I didn't know if we wanted to address that as well. At the same time, if we're gonna make a
Yeah.
modification, you know,
Well, certainly, I mean, yes,
or
we
whether or
can-
not we have language to that effect already in place. Because there were a couple of things we talked about, that they, you know, they would be responsible for any installed utilities that are within 100 feet or 10 feet of our public utilities, you know, et cetera, that they provide. Now, you said they do provide record drawings, or they don't? And I have to take time to read this.
well, for individual house services?
No, well, I'm specifically talking about that gas main that went down.
Oh, that,
That was going here, but then it ended up going on top of our sewer line. And back around our sewer line, so if we have to go access our sewer line, we now have a gas main sitting right on top
well,
of it.
I guess you could think, if you really want to go that to, you know, this box showing us a sketch, we could say, you know what, show me a plan of where you want to be. Show me a plan, you know, they basically gave us something in writing, said, we plan on running down the shoulder.
Right.
They hit some ledge, the foreman happened to be out, Peter was on vacation, and the guy running the machine decided, I'll just zip out around the ledge. Hey, you know what, it's real easy digging here in the middle of the road. Yeah, our sewer line's right in the middle of the road because it's all sand. We backfill it. That's why it's so easy to dig.
And then they got to the manhole and they zipped back. I mean, they knew they were on top of the sewer. They knew it.
So that's not explicitly covered.
But this is the section that would cover that.
It would. It would. But this is more of a very basic.
You're
approach.
talking about more driveway
I'll be
type.
blunt. This is in response to the Brookline Street incident where it was a single family, it was an A&R lot. So no approval required through the planning board. House happens to have a spring somewhere in the backyard. Now the lot has been cleared, the trees are down, there's lawn in place, he's got a driveway comes down to the street. The water just cascades out into the street. It's frozen numerous times. We had to take the unenviable step of going out there in the public right-of-way, tearing out his driveway and just putting in stone because he refused to remediate his problem. I said, fine, if you won't, we will, and you're not going to like it, but I don't have a choice. You left me no choice. I'm not going to spend thousands of dollars of taxpayers' money to install a drainage system for something that you created. And quite honestly, this is another case where we almost have to have regulation to do the right thing. We had the same issues with the water services. People started taking really advantage of, I wouldn't even call them loopholes, but just, it doesn't explicitly say I can't, so I think I will. This is the same thing. Normally when we ask a developer, hey, you know what, we've got some water coming down, do you mind putting in a swale, some stone, a culvert under the driveway? No problem. I mean, they don't want a problem when they go to sell the house.
Exactly.
All we're saying here is you can't put water in the public way, and we reserve the right to pass judgment on whether you remediated that problem appropriately. And the dirt one speaks for itself. And again, it's a real issue with special permits, which, by the way, require a 25-foot paved section. So that's even usually out of the right-of-way onto their property.
Right.
And even those, over time, start to break down. But at least having a paved apron gives us a fighting chance to hold the edge of the roadway together. But, the gravel starts to pothole, they keep hitting it in and out, and all of a sudden we start losing our roadway because of we can't deny them access, and I certainly wouldn't say we could require a private homeowner to have to pave onto his property, but I think we have every right to regulate what happens within our right-of-way. And so whether that's 2 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet, as determined by our plans and the superintendent's layout, we determine where the edge right-of-way is, and you must pave from the road to there, and what you do beyond that. You maybe want to pave your driveway, you want to put in stones, you want to put in Belgian block pavers, your call. Just don't erode our roadway and don't put water into our roadway. It's common sense legislation, but we found an increasing number of people who are reluctant to
So,
do the
so,
right thing.
so would this cover, and I'm just going to specifically, for instance, River Road, where they are,
Mhm.
it's an approved subdivision or whatever, but it's paved, but they do slope down, and, I don't know, I haven't noticed an issue with it, but if it was a condition where water was running down the road.
That's slightly different in that it's an approved subdivision, so he's more in the subdivision control law, which says you can't increase the rate of runoff. So if there was pre-existing flow to River Road, they just can't
Okay.
exceed that.
Right.
Whereas this is again, you're
more of a nuisance
just
protection.
dumping water into the road, creating a public nuisance and a safety hazard. And which we would do the same thing during subdivision approval. We would say, no, we want a set of basins at the corner and
Right.
connect to our drainage system. But you have a more formal review process. This is really for the 12-foot driveway.
So, and you say, and I guess the thing that caught me, I was reading, driveways prior to April 1st, 20 shall not be required unless they remove, relocate, or repair to reconstruct it. Now,
It should be until, maybe.
yeah, until such time as they,
Yeah.
but none of these are likely to ever occur. These instances are likely to ever occur if it's a dirt driveway, right? They're not gonna relocate, reconstruct.
Maybe they want to regrade it, maybe they want to put in utilities.
How are you gonna know that?
Less of a chance to catch the ones in existence.
I mean,
I don't know that we can legislate after the fact. I mean, I'd
But
love
why
to-
not? Why, if their activity is damaging our road in the right of way, why don't we have the ability to, your lack of maintenance on on your, as a result of your driveway is causing damage to a public property, to a public, right of way, you need to do something. I mean, when I walk the street with the dogs, I see places where, the electric companies come and they put a new pole in and they damage our brand-new asphalt, and I go, really? You know, we put this asphalt down, now you've taken 5 years off the life of this piece of asphalt because you damaged it, or somebody's got their tractor out and they're pushing a wall around, or whatever they do. But I've seen it happen a lot, and it aggravates me that we have very few dollars to keep our roads up, but people have seen, you know, it's okay to damage it and walk away, and, you know, this is the same instance.
I've never seen a successful, and maybe Bill, maybe you have, I don't know what you do in Westford, but I've never been able to, in the communities I've worked in, post facto, go after.
Again, I'm not saying post facto, I'm just saying if
You've
they've
created
caused an
damage,
issue.
but it's predicated on the assumption that the, whatever it is, was installed under the current regulations.
I
and in
understand
compliance with the rules that were in
grandfathering,
effect at
right.
that time.
I understand grandfathering, I just, you know.
Exactly.
But if someone were to come along and, you know, rip up the asphalt and we knew who it was, we'd be after them to fix the asphalt, right?
Yep.
So, you know, to me, how is that different? Their activity or lack of activity has caused an issue with our system.
Yeah.
I'm just
No, it's-
talking, that's all.
Yeah, no, it's,
You need to reserve the right to require someone to do something if they're damaging the town property.
I would, you know what, I'd really like to have that discussion with town council to see what, if there's a, you know, chapter in law that I can invoke. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's not the most pleasant phone call to make, but you're right, if somebody's damaging the roadway, you need to
And
fix it.
again, this is a judgment call. If it's just a little bit of fraying, you're like, okay, but, you know, there's been the instances, you know, where they build these things and the trucks are damaging the hell out of our road, and they go in and they lay their asphalt, and our road's all beat up now because of their activities, and I'm like, wait a second, you know, they got their brand new road, it looks great to their subdivision, but our road's all damaged, and now the public has to go pay for the road, or we have to divert funds from another road that probably needed it worse to go make a
Again,
repair.
assuming-
Ken has it right. He's talking about the difference between a dirt road that exists and you're talking about a new subdivision. In the case of a new subdivision where they're gonna tie into a road, in the town I work in, that's when I go out and tell them how much road they're gonna cut back
Right.
and replace.
We don't do that typically, from what I've seen.
Well, no, we would hold a bond and ask them to do the repairs. And the same thing with the common driveway. At least the common driveway, you got a special permit. Subdivision, you got subdivision approval. Site plan, you got site plan approval. These are single-family home, individual driveways that are, you know, I wouldn't say unregulated, because they do have to get a permit, but we're just trying to tighten it up after, again, the incidents, unfortunate as they were, where we were told, well, you really can't go after them, even though it's obvious that the ice is 2 inches thick on the road and you're down there with a front-end loader trying to scrape it off.
All right, before we go into any more detail, can I just ask you, you've given us 4 pages. First one, you highlighted existing regulations. This is all existing text, correct?
Oh, yes, yes.
On the first page.
First page, and I
Second-
highlighted that
second
just to
page,
show you that it's.
red
in
is
the
what
town.
you'd like to add,
Correct.
Third page, there's no changes from
No
what we have.
changes.
And then fourth page, you'd like to add the section down the bottom.
Correct.
All right, I just want to understand what I was
Yeah.
looking at.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And the only reason I highlighted that section on the first page is to point out that it is under the code of the town of Pepperell, which is any changes to the code need to be ratified through a vote or town meeting. The code, all it says is to do any of this work, you must go get a permit. This board has the authority to amend at will the conditions of the permit, so you don't need to go to town meeting. Thank you for that
I'm just trying
clarification.
I
to
would-
know for sure what I'm looking at here, that's all.
You may want to direct people a little bit more towards the words public right-of-way, because most people think of it as a paved road, and they go, I'm not doing any work in the right-of-way.
Right.
So
Okay.
you may want, you maybe even put an example, have, you know, a box that's filled in to the extent that you show, you know, here's a typical one filled out, so that when they are looking at it, they go, oh, so I gotta go back, you know, the 8 feet from the, you know, the edge of the pavement, and I now, and that way
You
it'll
know,
be clear.
I actually even thought
Except
about
it's
almost
tough to
like,
throw a number at people, because people ask me that question all the time. Well, how far off the road do I own? Because I think of the road, I use the term EOP, edge of pavement.
Yep.
But everybody wants to know, well, where's my land start off the edge of the road, and off the edge of the pavement? And
Hire a
it's-
surveyor.
Yeah, that's not a question that can be answered by saying 4.
Correct, but to have an example there so that,
well,
because people think right away, they think
well,
pavement.
let me throw this by you, and I know it's not gonna be a one-size-fits-all answer, but having had experience of filling out accident reports as a youth, the old DMV forms had the pre-printed diagrams, and you just had to kind of fill in the dots. I was thinking along the lines that, granted, it wouldn't be a curve road, but a straight road showing, right of way, pavement,
Yep.
and driveway with width varies or distance varies, and they could sort of fill in the details, and that might at least you could set the boundaries of right of way, pavement.
Well, rather than asking for a sketch in this box, I think I'd go with your thing, and you give an example sketch, and then they include a piece of paper.
Right.
Okay.
That has a sketch, so that at least they know what you're looking for. It's
So
not somebody.
call us an example, and then they can be
Yes, it's
submitted
not someone
separately.
drawing a line or a stick figure where you're
Yep.
expecting a
Right.
portrait.
And you may want to say a minimum distance, because, 2 inches, the right of way isn't really going to do you any good, but minimum 4 feet or something. If the typical the distance from EOP to, right of way is 4 feet, put something minimum, typical 4 feet or.
And I think a 4-foot minimum, or even like I'm trying to think like the radii. It's going to be handwork anyway, but.
Just so that you get enough. And then I guess that you're gonna cite, we must have a detail to do that matching, to match the pavement up, right? Because they're gonna wanna, tack it in and.
Yeah, good point. Saw cut, tack it, sand it, and of course, this is really, the dirt driveways could go up or down, so it may be in their best interest to keep water from, from the street, from what
Right, so
used
they
to be
may-
a sand berm is now a driveway cut.
Yeah.
They may want to do something to protect their property, and likewise, if it's on, an uphill slope, we obviously don't want dirt and runoff, sort of coupling onto the first one. That's the worst case scenario if you think about it. You have an uphill driveway and it's not paved, it's just dirt, and every time it rains, you're getting water and rocks washing out into your.
So the sketch doesn't help you in that case. You're looking to have language that says they're not gonna create a nuisance.
Right, and so
Right.
that would give Peter the authority when he's out there to say, okay, yeah, I see what you're doing, and I'm looking at your sketch going, yeah, it's not gonna work, you're really gonna need to put in some stone there, swale it, and carry it off over there, or I'm not signing off on the permit. And we didn't have that authority the first time around.
Would you wanna include language that says specifically that you can't be a nuisance, or you're, I know you say shall increase runoff to the public way, but that may not provide, you may want to include, because the existing runoff may be going into a small swale, and that small swale now gets picked up, so you may want to say you can't, change the rate and create a nuisance.
How do you measure that, though? How do you determine that you haven't increased the runoff?
That's, again, the increase is really geared towards subdivisions. We're trying to create, to your point, the nuisance, where
Well,
it
it's right
used to be
here.
a treed, wooded area, now you have a 12-foot wide by 100-foot long downhill asphalt runway, and it's just pouring into our street.
I mean, you can get.
You have it right here in this item 23.
Couldn't you say any, like for the driveway thing, you will not introduce any runoff into the public way? I know just one of the communities I lived in, before they approved it, they wanted to see the slope of your driveway. And even where I am now, I'm up on a hill, it comes down, and just before it gets to the right of way, I've got a little dip there, and I have drainage pipe on the side. And that way, my runoff never, ever gets into the street. In worst case, yes, it may come back at you, and now you've got to do something to keep it from getting into your house, whether you change grades and just say.
That's
you
almost
can't-
like striking the balance between it's not quite a subdivision, but if you had a wooded lot that forever has always discharged water onto that road, now you're putting in a driveway, and we still expect water to come from that property because it always has, except now because you've created, it's coming out faster, there's an increase. I mean, how do you measure it? It's really the eyeball test. I mean, in this case, for example, we never had a freezing problem there, ever. And we had one every week after this driveway was put in.
But, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, we're allowing them to build a house, and they should not be impacting our road through that process. So at the end of the day, I like the idea, shall not, contribute to create or contribute to a nuisance, on the roadway, and, almost have a zero, status where there should be no change in runoff, no impact to the roadway as a result of the new driveway, period.
Yeah, we can,
Tom,
Right, so
and
whether
let me
you're-
answer your question, it's quite often an eyeball test. You go out there and go, this isn't gonna work for me,
Yep.
before the pavement goes down.
Right.
Okay, so you know
This
that-
isn't gonna work.
Okay, you know that before they actually construct it.
With enough experience, it's pretty obvious to you.
It's like in mine, again, the road's here and my house is up here, so the driveway comes down.
Yeah, I understand
Just
that.
before
I
you
mean,
just get
I-
that little-
I understand that, but would you have known about the spring on that land before they cleared the land and before you approved the permit for the driveway?
no.
Okay, so he would have built the driveway,
Mhm.
all right, and then you would have gone back and said, you need to change it.
Well, actually, before he built the driveway, as the land was being cleared, the water was starting to become an issue. To the point where we were investigating all kinds of thoughts, like, well, I think there used to be a chicken coop out there, maybe there's an old water service. We were testing for, for chlorine in the water. It's like as he was clearing the lot and constructing, the water was showing up, and it's like, we have no idea where it's coming from, but it's gonna be a problem. We try to get it under the auspices of you can't push snow and stuff into the roadway, and basically, council said you really can't go that route because you have to allow him access. You don't have a stormwater bylaw. And I said, well, we will, but not for a couple of years, because to your point about only making changes once, I didn't want to write a stormwater bylaw just for this, just to change it in a couple of years for the MS4 permit, to change it again for the OSRD permit. Let's do one stormwater permit in 2 years that covers everything. This is essentially, it's a right-of-way, driveway, stopgap measure.
I guess I'm
What
trying
is-
to understand the scope of the problem.
Well, if I can explain for a minute, if I can interject. What he's looking for is language to back him up in the problem case. In most cases, reasonable people can agree to reasonable things.
Yep.
Occasionally, you find someone that's unreasonable.
Yep.
So you need language to back you up when you say, this isn't acceptable, it needs to be changed.
Okay, I can buy that, I can understand that, all right? But the flip side of that coin is, someday it's not Peter, all right, but it's Attila the Hun, okay? And and he's abusing the regulations. So that's why I always,
And then they come to him or us,
Be cautious,
and,
yep.
we deal with it.
I'm not creating a nuisance. Okay, let's
Let's
hear it
evaluate
out. Let's
that.
evaluate.
Before the
okay,
house
so
was
that's
there.
my next question, is there an appeals process here?
Any decision made by any staff, you are the court of last
Okay,
final
then I'm
jurisdiction.
fine with that.
No,
Last
we-
question is, until such time, they're grandfathered, until such time as they're removed, fine, relocated, fine, repaired, you gotta define that for me. I had my driveway repaired last year, okay? Had nothing to do with how I access the right of way, all right? So
Is
that,
it oil and stone? Is it pavement? Is it cobbles? Is it brick?
yeah, no,
Is
it's.
it sand? I mean, I could list every possible type of repair, every type
Yep.
of driveway treatment.
Yep. You might wanna say repaired as it as it touches the
Sometimes
At
right
the end
of
of the day,
way.
we don't care what was done to the driveway, we just don't want it to be a nuisance. So,
Well, no,
that's why I
hang
think
on.
that's the most important
If
part
I
of
have a
this.
runoff today on my driveway,
Yep,
right? I'm grandfathered, right? Because it was built before April 1st,
right.
2017.
But if there was, honestly, if there was an issue with your driveway, they would have, a true issue with your driveway, they would have done something about it. So they haven't. So your driveway's okay
Yep.
for all intents. The next driveway that comes along, or somebody does a repair to their driveway, and now they created a nuisance, you need to be able to deal with that.
Yeah, if
And
they
that's what-
create the nuisance during the repair, but if I'm grandfathered, if my driveway's fine, and I have somebody come in, and I won't say it's fine, it would not have been approved under today's rules, okay?
Right.
But it was built 10 years ago, but now I have to make a repair on the driveway, right? A small repair, right? Why should it not still be grandfathered?
I see where you're going. My thought process, and I knew this would create a whole different set of questions. I was thinking of repaving.
I'm fine with repaving.
But then somebody's like, well, I don't have a paved driveway. I have brick.
It's a dirt driveway.
And I'm resetting the bricks. I'm not repaving, I'm re-bricking. And so do I try to encapsulate every major repair?
I think repair is too broad a term.
Okay.
But removed, relocated, or reconstructed, I'm fine with.
Okay, I mean, and if we can agree to consider repaving reconstructed, kind of a
That
thing.
would be fine.
That would be,
We can,
because if they bring in a lot of fill or graded base and build it
Yeah.
up, then it could run out.
yeah.
Well, you're gonna
And it's
put-
reconstructed, but it's,
You didn't put major repair, so,
Yeah.
to your point,
Yeah.
if you're filling in a pothole, you don't have to redo the end of your driveway.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but,
Or,
you know,
yeah, if
you-
I have somebody come in and fill cracks.
I
Again,
gotta,
if
I gotta tell
someone
you,
came in and filled cracks, and you weren't a nuisance before, you're not gonna be a nuisance
No,
after.
but let's say I am a nuisance, but I'm grandfathered. The whole,
If you're a nuisance, the town's gonna come out and try to make, that's what happened at Brookline. This house was a nuisance,
Yeah.
and the town had to expend money to mitigate the nuisance.
Um,
And even if you're a nuisance right now, you're not a nuisance enough, that's requiring the town to go do something about it.
but then why grandfather me? Okay, see,
Well, that was my question before, but it's very typical when you change a regulation to grandfather people.
Yeah.
It's
So-
just, that's the, you don't wanna make anybody angry who's already connected.
Yeah.
It's very standard.
I can tell you, this can be a difficult subject. In the town I work in, if you're repaving over the existing driveway, you don't need a permit, have at it. If you're tearing up your driveway, you need a driveway permit.
Sure.
Now, this can get a little confusing when the fact that, I can call up ABC Asphalt Repair or Asphalt Driveway Company, and they'll be out tomorrow and
Yep.
tear it up and start throwing asphalt down. And the only way we know it's happening is if somebody happens to drive by.
Yep.
And there's equipment all over, there's equipment trailers in the road, there's
Yeah.
dump trucks running around,
Yeah.
it's,
You get one of the gypsy companies, they're in and out in a day.
exactly, they can be out, if you're just overlaying a driveway is the proper term.
Yep.
You can be gone in 2 hours,
okay.
and we never know what happened. And that in itself could cause a problem, because now you're changing elevations.
Right, that's actually
Okay,
worse than,
At that point, we don't necessarily require a permit, because as I said, they can be come and gone so fast that now you're chasing somebody for $30.
Yeah.
And it's not about the money.
Yep.
It's about the opportunity to review what they're doing to that driveway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if someone had a 9-foot wide driveway for 30 years, someone else buys a house and decides, well, I've got 4 kids, each of them got cars, I've got a couple extra in the garage, and now I want my driveway to be 26 feet wide with a turnaround at the top and an extra garage. Well, you've just tripled the amount of pavement, and the flow down that slight incline on your driveway, the amount of water just tripled onto the roadway.
I'm just saying that
So-
the term repair
Yeah,
under,
that's a good point. Right?
is ambiguous, okay?
Yes.
Versus you go to
especially,
Home Depot and get a can of black patch
yeah,
and like,
yeah,
I got a
especially
pothole.
Right,
following,
it's a repair.
especially as part, supporting the grandfather clause, okay? If you struck the word repair, I wouldn't be having this conversation.
I have the
And that's
example.
also in the next one.
The example I use, we've run into, some gentleman decided to rent a piece of equipment or borrow it from his friend and expanded his driveway, is now 3 times wider. He lived on a hill, probably with a 10-foot elevation change from the road.
Yep.
And suddenly he was pouring vast amounts of water onto the roadway.
Well, and
And
that,
we had to go out and ask him to mitigate the circumstance, the
Yep.
situation, even though he had already completed his driveway. Say, look, it doesn't work for us.
Yeah.
You've impacted
and that's
the public roadway.
that's perfectly justifiable.
So that'd be fall under reconstructed, and I think maybe,
Yeah.
to your point a little bit more, is if you're crack sealing, but if the
That's a
repair
repair.
is such that it's going to alter the pitch of the road,
I think
then
that's
that
covered.
could fall under
I think that's
reconstruction.
covered under
Well, let's
the
put it
other
this way,
terms.
not to beat it, but as Bill said, good people tend to do the right thing anyway. This is really, the only recourse we had legally against Brookline Street was, does the town have a stormwater bylaw? No, we don't, you're done. So this would suffice as a stormwater bylaw. Legally, we could have gone after him after the fact and said, fix it.
Will it still suffice without the word repair? So let it be
So
said.
why don't, if you'd like, I can reword it with like the nuisance.
I would add
try
nuisance to it,
Get, you know,
because now you don't have, you can say, look, we didn't have an icing problem here today,
Yep.
but 2 weeks ago, and now we have an icing problem.
Yeah.
You did something,
Yep.
period. We've checked our system, it's
so
on.
instead of cause an increase in runoff, it should be to create a nuisance in the.
Well, you could say cause an increase and/or create a nuisance.
Okay. Okay, and I'll rework the example, I think it's a good idea, on the drawing.
Yep.
And again, I just, it pains me to have to do regulations for the sake of, people who just won't do the right thing. And again, it's not a huge cost thing. While you're building it, you put a little dip in it and make the water go that way instead of out this way. It doesn't cost any more at all.
No.
As I said, reasonable people will do a reasonable thing. It's the
Yeah.
1/2% that you have an issue.
No, I agree with you.
And I would have thought this gentleman knew he had a problem when somebody came to look at his house and there was so much water in the winter, his driveway froze and he had to call a wrecker to get his potential customer out of the driveway because he was stuck on the ice in his own driveway. But we're the unreasonable ones. Okay, I will rework that and be back next time. The last one I had, just a follow-up to the last meeting, I mentioned I would provide you with a synopsis from our consultant as well as an overview of the more common funding mechanisms for NIPDs. I've done that. I just got this one, did you date it? March 17th. I think we did get it after that. We got it this week. Again, it's far from final. I probably should have written draft on that as well. But this sort of gives you an idea of the breadth and cost we're anticipating. This is for, I guess, going left to right. You know, it's a, it shows you the 5-year rollout, and the, I'm trying to think of the MCM. I'm just at a loss for it. There's 6.
Minimum control measure.
Thank you. There's 6 of these. And so what they've done is that they've gone through, try to decide who would be responsible, what the estimated cost would be. There's other documents. This is far from a complete picture. There's costs for disposal of catch basin cleanings versus I asked them to give us a cost for preparing what's called a beneficial use determination. It's a form you file with DEP that says, okay, we've got these sweepings, these tailings and whatnot, we will agree to have them tested in a lab for these certain constituents, and if they meet your criteria, we would like to use them for, you know, in our case, we probably mix them with our road grindings or construction debris and use it for road fill. You know, it was in a catch basin today, it's under the road tomorrow, they'll probably be okay with that, as long as it doesn't have heavy metals and so on and so forth. So the cost in the first year for doing the BUD, you only have to do it once. The cost for preparing that is about the cost of the first year disposal. After that, obviously, the disposal costs are annual and the BUD cost goes away. So there'll be those kinds of costs that the town is gonna have to weigh, the lab cost, the testing cost, not only for the BUD, but for the eventual outfalls from we have to test outfalls from the drainage system. Those are still floating numbers. We've asked them to look at what would it cost us to only do the areas in what's called the urbanized area. That's all we're obligated to do under the permit. To tie into the last discussion, to do the right thing, yeah, we probably should go townwide. We should map townwide. We should try to be good environmental stewards. I'd like to see what the cost difference is. What if we're forced against the wall?
So this is UA only? These costs are,
I believe this one is for UA only. I'll have to double check. I just downloaded the forms today. But so there's a bunch of other things. But I just thought, you know, when I threw that number out last time, you know, it's I think I told you what, 60,000 a year average, something like that. So on the last page, so it's down to 55.9.
well, these don't include any inflation in them, so they're all today's costs and
Yeah.
guesses anyway.
And
I guess some of this stuff is stuff that we might be able to manage, correct? Or-
Possibly.
Or are you proposing, it doesn't matter, well, it does matter, but,
some of it, again, as we get more into this and we see what the staff availability and capability is, yeah, there's certain things we probably could do in-house. And I'm thinking as the years go on, yeah, we'll just get familiar with it and say, you know, we can take that over now. I don't expect all of these costs to be here forever, but a lot of them will be. The reports, the testing, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure the regulations, as this program rolls out for basically forevermore, they're never gonna
Go
away or lessen. So if anything, I expect the onus to become more. And really, I think it comes down to staffing and availability. I mean, right now, we're looking at, okay, how do we carve out a guy from the highway department to really go clean the basins and track them, and do we send, you know, Paula out there for her limited hours working with the engineering budget? You know, how much can we absorb on top of what we're already having them do? So that's the discussion. Again, this is so preliminary. Peter and Paul and I really haven't sat down to say, what does this really mean to our operations? I was just trying to do the broadsword approach at this point. Okay, this is your townwide budget. How much we just do the urbanized areas? And it looks to me like we save approximately $5,000 a year.
How many outfalls? Because this site's 59, that's why I asked.
Yeah, that's significantly less.
Okay. That's the UA outfalls?
Yes, UA outfalls.
And there's $7,300 they can eliminate, top of page 2 of 4, first line. We don't have any of those, so
SSOs? Yeah.
we don't need them to inventory them, because we don't have any.
Well, actually, no, that's not true. Not CSOs, SSOs.
Yeah, we don't have any SSOs. Those are
one.
capacity-related
What
SSOs,
about
they're
the
not.
ones in Donaldson's
No,
parking lot?
that's a private issue, that's not an SSO
Had one.
from our.
Oh,
Had one.
Tucker?
Yeah, Tucker
Tucker
Park.
Road,
Yeah, but
SSO.
it wasn't a capacity-related issue. These,
Correct.
their
Yep.
their citation is
Yep.
capacity-related. You can't predict a maintenance-related SSO. But you can leave it there. I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah, that,
No, it's,
It's money. It's
Yeah.
money.
I think really
I know that.
I know, like last meeting, I rattled off a whole list of things, and this kind of puts it in perspective, and not everything's done every year, not everything has to be done the first year, and there's still some jockeying around to be done. In fact, I've got to compare this with the one we just had a couple weeks ago. I know for a fact the peak year was in, I think, year 3 last time. Now it's out to year 5, which it gives the time to start doing some financial planning. How are we gonna fund this? But with these numbers, again, unvarnished numbers, you're talking somewhere between $20,000 and $100,000 per year, averaging $55,000 a year. I can't believe I'm saying this. That's on the cheap side. That's actually on the way cheap side. By EPA's own estimates, the average cost per community is typically in the range, I think, $89,000 to about $275,000.
This doesn't include the cost for street sweeping,
No.
catch basin cleaning, which is technically usually in the cost that EPA is talking about.
And which is, to my point, I think last week I threw out a number somewhere in the 100 to 125,000 is probably, a solid budget number in the out years. I mean, I hate to think what you guys are paying in Westford. It's probably a lot more than that per year. But
I don't think it's broken out quite that way yet, but I don't really get involved in
yeah,
this.
but I mean, in having seen Paul's presentations, so a neighboring town, I'm guessing you're double that. You're probably 250 or more
Oh, at
a
least.
year easily.
I've seen some presentations that are easily that.
I know Newton has got a stormwater budget bigger than our highway budget.
It's $2 million. It's over $2 million a year.
Granted, it's the city of Newton. I mean, they have an entire staff. So, which leads me to the second part of this, which is this 2-page pamphlet. Again, prepared by a consultant. There is no magic bullet of how to do it. But these are like the big 3. Again, you put it in the municipal budget. You do it on taxes. And as the chart on the backside, it gives you the pros and cons. The biggest problem with that, as I said, is your biggest runoff generators tend to be tax-exempt properties, schools, churches, and municipal buildings. So usually not a fair way to do it. The SRF is probably just not all that popular, and it's a one-time.
You can't, technically you can't pay for O&M with SRF money anyway. A lot of this is
It's like a one-time loan to get up and running, and that's why it's not
Still
very
gotta pay-
popular, and it's
You
competitive.
gotta pay the loan back.
Yeah, and it's competitive.
So-
So what you're doing is you're taking 20 years to pay back 5 years worth of costs, and for the next 15, you're almost paying
More.
twice. So you still have to budget years 6 through 20 while you're still paying off that loan. And then the last one is, as I mentioned last week, was probably the most popular or gaining in popularity is the stormwater utility. Essentially, it's an enterprise fund. From that point, the road forks 100 different ways. Is it a standalone enterprise fund? Do you do it on top of water and sewer? Do you do it in the highway? Communities, I think, that have significant overlap in water and sewer customers, it's an easy one to share billing, and people tend to be a little wonky seeing this show up on their tax bill, but it's another way to do it. It's an enterprise fee, but it's on a tax bill. It gets a little confusing, so it's perceived as a rain tax, and that's something that the EPA is working very hard to eliminate that kind of terminology, because again, they're trying to phrase or to color this whole process in a do the right thing kind of approach. Don't look at it as a tax or a burden. Look at it as cleaning up the environment and making it better for generations to come, and there's a cost
I
to
guess
that.
one thing that's missed in some of the stuff that we talked about here is the whole idea of just maintenance of that system by itself, and that's like a Newton. They take the revenue that they make and they make improvements. They rebuild catch basins, they rebuild pipes, so that culvert on
Yep.
Mount Lebanon near my house, that the money to pay for that would come out of a stormwater utility, because it's relating, it's got to do with
Absolutely.
conveying the, even this driveway we talked about, if it was something that was a warranted public funding, well, it's a stormwater issue because it's stormwater that's getting onto the road, it's
Yep.
causing a freezing problem, so you look to that source of that enterprise fund to deal with that issue.
Which is why, that $55,000-$60,000 per year, as you so aptly put it, that does not include a lot of the costs, and of that 125, I had always have been mentioning to the powers that be that, that this type of program will also beget its own mini capital program. Exactly that. You've got to be replacing pipes, you've got to be rebuilding catch basins, you've got to be doing grease and oil hoods. There'll always be construction components. Do you need a new catch basin vehicle? Do you need a new street sweeper? I mean, these things, and now we're talking, $200,000 and $300,000 investments. That's where the enterprise fund really starts to make more sense. But again, it's getting more well received. But I will tell you this: in 5 years ago, it was an absolute third rail. I mean, you just didn't want to go there. But more and more communities are realizing we don't really have a choice. It's also a way of making sure that you got the appropriate staff. To your point about how do we absorb some of these things? Well, yeah, maybe we have 2 dedicated people, and you're the stormwater team, or one person in highway and one person, a GIS person, and a new highway body, and you somehow mix and match their time. And again, as I said, the road forks 100 different ways when you decide to go stormwater utility. You can really make it your own and what works for the town. But
Unfortunately, you have the cost of starting up a new department to do that.
yeah.
In a small town like Pepperell, I see it more tax-based myself. And it's stuff, it's work that traditionally the highway department has done, at least the hands-on type stuff. But when you start getting into the permitting and the GIS work and so on and so forth, that's an added component.
So, but, with the tax itself, aside from the tax exempt properties, then you've got the issue of, I guess with any of them, assigning a value. So you've got to have a program cost, and then how do you assign the value? Is it based on per square foot of impervious? Is it based on lot size? Is it?
Right, but if it's in the tax base, it's on the valuation of the property.
Is it? But that absolutely has
So-
nothing to do with the amount
So
of.
the school, so Nissitissit School, a lot of impervious area,
But the problem
But
with that.
they're not contributing at all to,
No, but then the school turns around and says, great, the town pays the bill anyway, so the whole rest of the citizens share that burden.
but again, it should be spread that way as opposed to nothing,
So could the argument be made that I have a dirt driveway, I have no impervious area, why should I pay?
You drive on the roads, right?
I drive on the roads, but I'm not,
Who owns the roads?
Do you have a
townspeople.
The
hovercraft?
townspeople own the
Because-
roads.
right.
If you have a vehicle.
Everyone
and
drives on the
it's
roads.
4 tires and a
But I think
transmission.
the
and an engine.
individual car contributes, the individual lot also helps contribute to that.
Correct.
Like we said, if you have a lot of
You got a roof.
impervious area,
You got a roof, it's impervious.
right, but it's gonna drain off onto a grassed area, which I'm 100 feet off the road, it's never gonna see the road.
It's a very complex subject when you try to develop a tax based on impervious area, because as you say, take for example Nissitissit. Nissitissit does not contribute to the waters of the US because it's got an infiltration, it's got a
Depends what
basin.
interpretation you're calling it, but yes.
But I'm thinking like a
It's complicated in a
Donlands,
hurry.
someone like that, it's all impervious, so it's like every drop of water that comes off of that plaza, for example, is contributing to the stormwater.
And let me just counter that with a real-life example in the town of Westford. The owners of Market Basket built a beautiful, brand-new facility on Route 110. Maybe you've been there. Spent, I know, many, many six figures, possibly pushing seven figures in stormwater control. They did the right thing. They've got leaching chambers, they've got grease and oil control, they've got everything. And then the town's gonna turn around saying, oh, by the way, here's your bill. It's like, where's my credit?
It all goes to the underground infiltration system.
Exactly. I just put in $800,000 worth of improvements, and
the tractor trailer that delivers
Yeah.
your goods drives on the road.
but again, based on impervious area, I'm taking care of my, it's so. And I also believe on the tax side, and I'm going to, I think, 2 seminars next week. Just one's a half-day one at Westford about one thing, but this company CEI is actually having a seminar down in Marlborough. I don't know if anybody else is going. I know Peter's going, and the town planner. But I think there's an issue legally with the taxes, and I've got to review the records, but I know it's been challenged a couple of times doing it through the tax base. That's why it's not a highly recommended. The utility seems to be a cleaner, more legal, quote-unquote, way to do it.
Hey, I know communities that do it through their sewer rates.
Yep.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of them that do it through their sewer rates. It's really not cool.
And especially in a town like this where you don't have that massive overlay of taxpayers and utility subscribers.
And a dry warehouse contributes a lot of stormwater, but no wastewater. So,
I don't know, just I,
the
Was
impervious
involved in
area
this
one, the
10
model,
years
I've seen a
ago,
lot of them, and they,
the stormwater
you know,
utilities.
it's pretty easy. A house is this much, and everybody else, you gotta do factors of
And having
houses.
the
Say
separate
equal
enterprise
20
fund.
houses, or
You know, at
create
least
a
for
dollar
every dollar
per
that comes
house.
in, you know where it's going.
And
Versus on the tax
if
base.
it's 20 houses worth, then they pay 20 times
As with
that.
others, it gets lost in the shuffle.
Fairly fair. And they
But
do
then-
discounts for people with,
But then
Managed
someone needs
entirely.
to analyze the entire town.
Well, again, with we've got six
Well,
inch
You do it per house, and someone has to go through the entire town and analyze it.
well, you know how many houses you have, you know how many lots you have, so you start there, and
Well,
you analyze the ones that aren't standard format.
you can
It's
use
similar to what the assessor does. They go through every property in town, and you would have to do it once, essentially, and, you know, to get your base. I just think if it goes on the taxes, if it goes part of the general fund, as with every other water or sewer, if it goes to the general fund, you take 10 in and only 5 come back out, and you're always struggling. And you're basically subsidizing the general fund.
Schools.
So I know an
But
enterprise
to your
is
point, Paul, I
unpopular,
mean,
but-
in the old days, what they would do, 10 years ago or less, Soil Conservation Service, they had an average for a quarter acre lot, a half acre lot, a 1 acre lot, and it had X percentage. Nowadays, and even we have 6-inch aerial photography. They can easily separate by layer houses and driveways. Again, are we gonna get
Doesn't
cute
need
and
to
talk
be
about
that-
dog houses and
See,
patios?
I don't think it
mean,
needs to be
that's-
that complicated,
it-
though.
But I talked to the folks in Drake, and they've got people coming in going, well, I just took out 7 square feet of walkway in the backyard. I need to apply for my 37-cent abatement.
But this is the same argument we had earlier on the IMA. It's like, but you drive the roads. Most of the
Oh,
costs.
I get it.
Most of the costs of us managing the stormwater system are driving the roads. This is a way to generate revenue, okay? And revenue has to be
Yeah.
generated to pay for this.
So,
And again, like this, it could, like a base fee, so, great, you took away your 37 cents, but we're gonna say a residential unit on average is X.
In Newton, they allow people to manage on site, but they only cut their bill to a certain extent, period. In Cambridge, they do all kinds of funky things, but they have people that go and inspect these systems to make sure they're working. So they have a staff dedicated to going out and looking at these systems, but again, they don't abate the whole bill, they give them a percentage, but again,
and we haven't even scratched the tip of things like, well, what about low-impact development, which would be part of the stormwater master plan, which means now we've got to send people out to inspect the rain gardens and everything else that these developers are building, and they're in Boca Raton having a good time, and we're left with this cul-de-sac full of weeds and trash, trying to figure out if it still works. I mean, there's these costs that will come down the road that nobody wants to talk about, but they're real, and they will come to bite us, so.
Basin, there's one of those near my house, it's got a lot of trees growing up on it. I walk by it, I go, who owns this?
Who
Who's
owns
gonna have
it?
to deal with this bad boy?
We
when-
can't take appropriate care, in my opinion, of all the detention and retention basins, because again, we just don't have the staff for it. So we do as best we can every couple of years. You start piling these things on in every nook and cranny. Oh, I need to build a house, and they're making me put in one of these, but the town now owns it. You're going to have a list as long as your arm of these little things, and it's a full-time job just running around checking it up. And then the filing of the annual reports, the stormwater management reports. Every time it rains, you need to go up there and do grab samples and make sure it's operating properly.
Busy work.
It's busy work, but which we don't have the staff to do. So, anyhow, I know I keep sounding like a broken record, but it's coming. It's real. It's not going away, and the town needs to get serious. And I don't mean $10,000 a year. Serious.
Right, but if say it's 100,000 and there's 4,000 properties, it's $25. And I know $25 isn't inconsequential, but people pay more than that for their data plan for 1 month, and so $25 a year
Absolutely.
isn't that much for us to at least start to get the right money going to the right place to be able to maintain our systems appropriately.
Yep. Oh, I agree, and again, I do think we have a moral and professional obligation to leave this place a little better than we found it. And yeah, do I agree with everything? No, but I understand the end game. And again, my crystal ball says eventually, I don't think it's any coincidence that it's a NIPD's permit, just like a NIPD's permit for the wastewater plant. I think ultimately any discharges to any water body, it's going to be this whole big umbrella of regulatory mishmash, whether it's street runoffs, sanitary runoff, treatment plant runoff.
It's easy to make the argument it's something we should be doing anyhow. However, it's everything we do digs into someone's pocket.
And it depends on the community. I mean, let's face it, certain communities are just known to be greener and embrace this more readily. And people live there for a reason. I mean, I know your town engineer is an excellent resource. And he'll tell you straight up, there's people who move to that town because of programs like this and are gladly paying the freight because that's the kind of community they want to live in. And I get it. But, and also, if it attracts that higher echelon, is it a bad thing? So, that's all I had to say about that. Nothing needs signing tonight? Comments?
I said too much.
Nothing.
No, we'll be kicking off, just so you know, that we're talking already with the utility companies about our roads programs and so forth, and trying to address a few of the more, sign and safety committee met today, and we're just going to try to address a few of the more problematic intersections with sightline, tree encroachments, that kind of stuff, but nothing crazy coming up. Next meeting dates were April 6th and 20th. I thought that worked for everybody. And then it was, I think May 1st was annual town meeting.
I'll be out on the 6th.
6th will be a quick meeting.
No such thing anymore.
And aside from the warrant articles, town accountant today, we talked about it, and she's going to put 3 placeholder articles for the enterprise funds, just in case we need to do some shifting of monies to or from retained earnings kind of a thing. If we don't need them, they will know, they won't get moved. And other than that, the only thing I'm aware of again right now is the budget articles, which we need to present our fiscal 18 operating budgets. And we had a brief discussion as far as the borrowing we talked about last week, or last meeting. Town administrator doesn't have a strong opinion one way or the other. He's okay with the fall town meeting, but he wanted me to make sure that I informed the board that there's the rare outside chance that there may not be a fall town meeting. I mean,
Unless we call it, right. I mean, we can call one.
but there's a cost involved, so be prepared for if it's for one article, good luck if you don't mind footing the bill for it.
Well, if it's a compliance issue, I'd rather pay the cost than pay the fine.
Mm-hmm. And the flip side would be, as we talked about last meeting, is to put an inflated contingency-laden number out there and change it again in the fall if there's a meeting, or
only if it goes up. If it goes down, again, the appropriation doesn't mean you borrow the
Correct.
full amount.
We put a number out there and we get it wrong.
I thought we had this discussion last week.
Yeah,
Yes.
we
Last
did.
meeting.
Well, I said I would check with the town administrator, because again, he does have a preference in most cases to do things in the spring when you've got you definitely have a meeting.
I would agree with him.
But he said, I don't have a strong preference in this case, but please make the board aware. There's the off chance there may not be one, and getting a quorum, as you well know, is,
Unless you guys say we should, I think anything short of 10 million is, gonna be suspect or dangerous, and 10 million is just wrong to put that kind of number in
Yeah,
front of
right.
people. But I don't feel any more comfortable with any number less than that.
and that's fine. And I'm okay going to the fall, because as John mentioned earlier, I can't recall a fall that we haven't had a special. There's
If you
always
don't have
mop-up
the
work.
facts to explain 10 million, it's
We don't.
tough.
It's
Right,
a wag,
we're still
It's not even
designing it, so there's
They're gonna
been
think we're
no.
fools.
educated.
No, I agree, so May 1st is the annual. And so, when Peggy's back from vacation, I'm guessing one of her first orders of business will be to put out a draft warrant, and at that point, we can do draft assignment of articles. Is that right?
I make a motion.
I would second such motion to adjourn if that's what you want.
That is exactly where I was headed.
All in favor?
Aye.
9:06.